Welcome back to the Something in the Wilderness podcast, where we discuss the music of Andrew McMahon from throughout his career, song by song. My name's Steve, and today we have a very special episode for you. We've not just one, but two returning guests, both of who have been on very recent episodes talking about Jack's Mannequin songs, because it is the year of Jack's Mannequin. So we thought it would be fun to all get together and cover this huge song from an album that I know you're very familiar with. And what timing for a tour announcement that just aligned perfectly with the song that we chose to talk about today. So, Hazel and Lindsay, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming back. Hazel, you and I recently discussed Kill the Messenger at the beginning of January from Everything in Transit. And then, Lindsay, you and I talked about Locked Doors on the last episode, a deeper cut. But I got to bring this up. We also talked about Out of It, a whole different song. Let's talk for a moment what happened at the very first Jack's Mannequin show of 2025. Spoiler alert for people who don't look at set lists, by the way.
So, Steve, we have either just witnessed the best ever tour announcement based on that playlist, or we just missed the coolest show ever. One of the two just happened because Out of It made that playlist.
It did, and I credit you for it. I'm just saying, I think you've asked enough and you've been polite about it, some polite requesting, and who knows, maybe someone's listening to this very show and they're like, maybe we should play Out of It. I don't know. I think you manifested it, Lindsay.
I hope so, but I'm going to continue to add, in Chicago, please.
Of course. I saw him mention it somewhere in an interview. I don't know if it was the recent Rolling Stone interview or somewhere, that he was going to try to pull out some deeper cuts and B-sides, and I think Out of It was actually one of the ones that he said he's going to try to bring back. I don't know if that article came out before that show or not, but I just found that really cool. I was like, all right, well, here we go. We're going to get some songs like that this tour then. And I apologize, and not that I'm responsible for it, but I'm sorry in advance if you don't get Out of It in Chicago, but that'd be a bummer. But
it would be.
Yeah.
No, but I did see, oh man, was it the Camp Wilderness, or was it perhaps it was the Discord server? Were either of you on for either of those chats?
I was on the Camp Wilderness one, not the Discord one.
I was not on either, but I did download Discord for the first time after. I was like, what's Discord? And I felt very out of it. So I'm going to try to get on the next one.
There you go. Did you say Out of It as a pun, or?
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah. I thought you were incorporating the song. I was like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, in one of the chats, he did mention Out of It and a few other B-sides as well as what he was really excited about to reintroduce into this tour that he hasn't been using so much in the wilderness tours. Okay.
Yeah, I missed apparently a lot while I was on the rock boat, and I have no regrets, of course, for the obvious reasons. But the whole tour rollout, except for the initial game, which we'll talk about for sure. But the official tour dates drop, and the Discord AMA, and there was just apparently a lot of things that happened. That Venice, California show I actually found out about after it happened. I was completely disconnected, and I was glad to be, but it was just kind of weird coming back to all of that news. So I was like, wow, there's a lot that happened here.
Hazel, did you get an opportunity to go to the pop-up show at all? Because I know you're out on the West Coast.
No, Venice is probably, it's 6-7 hour drive. Thought about it, but it was also on a Monday night, was it? Sunday night? Yeah. I don't remember. I was like, I got to work. I can't get there. I wish. That would have been awesome.
Yeah, knowing nothing about the geography of California, I wasn't even going to ask because I was like, I don't know if that's next door to her house or, the whole state away. I have no idea.
Yeah, I openly plead ignorance on exactly how California is laid out. We have friends that live out there, and then, the fires happened, and I was texting them, are you safe? And they're like, we're hours away from that. I'm like, okay.
It's a nice thing to ask, though. I'm sure they appreciated it. I got to admit, this is a full circle moment kind of for the podcast because I had both of you on for the first time each separately years ago. And then when we were in Vegas last year for the House of Blues show, Hazel, you and I were in line together, and Lindsay, you were further up in the line, but we were in communications. So I actually got the chance to introduce you guys.
Yeah, that was awesome. I loved meeting Lindsay. And our friendship kind of blossomed from there. And we've kept in touch on Instagram. And we feel like we're like in this budding relationship. We then exchange phone numbers and we text now and talk on the phone sometimes. So it's been a really great friendship.
Yeah, Hazel was very kind to me when I first met her. I was very excited after having read her book when Steve introduced me to her. And so I did, give her the caveat that I was going to fangirl for, a reasonable amount of time, I felt like, before I was a normal person with her. And so she was very generous and gracious with that situation.
You made my night. I loved it. It was like the icing on the cake being at the show and then getting to meet you. It was just really fun.
Yeah. And that was like a pretty brilliant show, getting to do the Something Corporate, I guess technically pre-show. I think we all call it the after show for when we were young, but I guess it was technically a pre-show, isn't it?
True, it was technically a pre-show. And I thought it was pretty cool that I hung out, my wife and I hung out with Hazel and her husband before the show, kind of leading into it. And then after the show, we hung out with you, Lindsay, and then the next night we got to hang out with you and your husband. So it was kind of a cool weekend to like hang out with other fellow Andrew fans that became friends.
And I mean, I think we talked about this a little bit too, Steve, but this is Hazel's 5th episode, right?
Oh, that's right. I do have something for you, Hazel.
Well, I almost sent you guys both something, and you're lucky I did not have my life together because I was going to send you both a little Malort shot your way.
Oh, you did mention that. Yeah. I don't know if I want to try that. Okay. I seem to have misplaced the file, but I will tell you what I have for you, Hazel. Lindsay suggested, I thought it was funny, we need to get you like a Something in the Wilderness robe. I don't know if you've ever watched SNL or if you keep up with SNL, but on SNL, when the host has been on 5 times, they get a robe. And so this is your robe episode.
Oh, I'm honored.
This is the 5th song you've been on the podcast talking about. So I did admittedly ask AI to make me a dark blue robe with a piano on it, and it did a fantastic job. I just can't find it right now. I'm sorry, but so,
I love it.
Well, it would be funnier
we
if I could show
definitely
it to
need
you.
a photo of that.
Yeah, so I will put that on the Instagram. Hazel's robe episode, I should say.
Well, thank you for letting me keep coming back and back.
Lindsay's on her way. Lindsay's following your foot, right behind you. So
I love it.
Let's get things kicked off, again, talking about specifically a lot about Jack's Mannequin this episode. Just to get things started, can you each share a memory you have of a particular, a memory with Jack's Mannequin music, like either a show or something that we haven't yet talked about on the podcast?
There's a period of my life back in like 2008. I was a very big Twilight book fan. And so I remember when the last book was coming out was around the same time as The Glass Passenger was being released. And like I remember there was all this talk about the author of the Twilight series, Stephanie Meyer. She was involved in the Resolution music video. And so I just remember it got me so excited to know that like those two worlds were kind of colliding.
I forgot about that. Yep.
And I just remember very specifically listening to Hammers and Strings over and over, kind of while I was in that reading of the last phase of the book. And it's just something that kind of sits with me. I remember sitting in front of someone's house. We were at a party. Not a party, just like a gathering. And I'm sitting outside. I had to finish the book. I couldn't go inside and socialize until I knew how the ending was. And I don't know, that song just goes with that book for me.
Hammers and Strings?
Yep.
Cool. Very cool. How about you, Lindsay? Do you have one?
Yeah, well, first I'm going to break your heart. I actually not only have never read any of Stephanie Meyer's books, I've never even seen the Twilight movies.
Wow.
So
how did you avoid them, though?
I have no idea. I know. I have never seen any of it. I guess I didn't even know that Stephanie Meyer's was involved in, it was The Resolution?
Yeah, she either wrote it or directed it. I think she directed it. I think she
Wow.
directed the video. Yeah, something like that.
I had no idea. So for Jack's Mannequin, I mean, I know we've talked about the Ravinia show, which was wonderful, but I think probably the one that stands out to me the most now, just like thinking about it, and maybe it's because of everything being a time warp over the last few years, but would be the drive-in shows when they did the anniversary of Everything in Transit. There weren't a lot of them, and there was 2 nights that were up here by me, and so, well, I went to one night, and it was such an interesting and surreal experience doing a concert that way, because you're both like there, but it's almost like you're watching a movie because everyone was back so far and everyone was really spread out. And at the time I was still working at a university hospital, and things weren't incredibly awesome, so I was like wearing 2 masks and staying away from everyone. And then our friends Stephanie and Stewie had a baby, and I got to meet him kind of like they were a car kind of by us, and like she like held the baby up, and so it was just like and it was cold. I just remember it being so cold at that show, and Morgan was there playing, and afterwards like I think I sent her a message through Instagram where like you did a great job, it was awesome and everything, and she's like, it was so cold to play. But
I caught one of those online. So whichever one they streamed, I don't know if it was the one that was by your house, but one of them they streamed. I think it was the California show, of course. That would make sense. But that was such a great show, and I remember really appreciating Morgan on that stage as well. So I remember for some reason it's a core memory sitting on my couch watching that live, which just sounds so weird now, but that's what we did sometimes that year.
It was that, like, some of the things we did that year just in general were very odd.
Yeah, still looking back. It's been 5 years, and it's just amazing to me. So that's the last time Jack's Mannequin toured, right? They played on the cruise, obviously, in November, but that's the last time they sort of toured. Mm-hmm. And they were playing Everything in Transit all the way through back then. But apparently that's not what we're going to get this time, is what I'm hearing. And if the set list from January was any indication, definitely not, but who knows? I mean, they might change it up here and there. So I'll give a memory. So mine's really recently, by the way. Going back to the last time I've seen Jack's Mannequin, which is fortunate for me, very recently, the same one Lindsay was at on the cruise in November. But I remember the excitement level on that day. It was almost like this energy you could feel and touch and like almost see radiating off of people. It was not the strangest thing I've ever seen, but like it was just kind of a strange, like this surreal moment. I had a really nice view, and I think, Lindsay, you were down the way, but had a similar view where we were kind of like looking over the crowd, over the rail from the second level. And just to see everybody's faces and just kind of like, even before it started, like you could just see this, it just felt like this palpable type of energy that you could see and feel and touch. And I'll just never forget that. And every song they played, I don't remember every single song they played, but I just remember what that felt like. And to me, that's, I've mentioned this before on the podcast, that's what's kind of important in concert for me. I remember what it felt like, but I don't necessarily remember everything that happened that day. I don't know. That was an exciting moment and one of my favorite memories from the cruise, honestly.
Yeah, I think it was really neat too, because, for people that weren't on it and maybe didn't get to see the video, although Six Man did put together a really nice video, by the time we had all gotten on board and kind of got settled in and everything, you could kind of explore the ship for a little bit and then go find a spot. And everyone, of course, is a huge fan, so everyone wants to be like in the mix of things. And we got settled into the deck above the stage to kind of look over. It was really, really nice, and you could see the water and everything. But I think one of the most telling things is like pulling away from port, and you can see all the other ships are like leaving around the same time too, and people are up on the decks waving and everything. Yeah. And we're like at a full-blown concert, which was just like a very cool experience. And I do wonder a little bit, like the people that were on the other boats, like, A, could they hear it? Right?
Oh, they could. They definitely
You
could.
think so?
Yeah,
okay.
I think they could.
And B, were they like, oh man, I wish I was on that one instead?
Yeah. Yeah, the one, I think specifically the one that you're referring to, was higher up than ours, and it seemed like everybody on the ship was looking down at us. That's what it felt like when I looked behind me and looked over at that ship. Yeah, that was pretty surreal as well, but they had to have been able to hear it. It was a concert. They weren't that far away, right? I'll always remember what that looked like with the boat sailing away and Jack's Mannequin playing. The view of the people, and I kind of like that. Hazel and I had a similar view of the Something corporate crowd in Vegas, where we were on a rail overlooking the main floor, and I really kind of like that view a lot. I actually have the same view for New Friends, not a New Friends tour. Now that I think about it, I really kind of I like looking at the crowd. I like watching people too. Watching people enjoy the show, it gets me more excited. So that was a cool one.
Yeah, I think that there's like a good mix of being in the crowd and like the energy that comes with that, because I feel like this is like a little bit like the introverted extroverted thing, like how you gain your energy, right? And sometimes it's fun to be dancing in the middle, but sometimes it's fun to just like take a step back and watch everybody taking it in.
Yeah, I've enjoyed both in different shows. So a quick peek behind the curtain for the podcast. So this does happen occasionally, but I actually had a guest for this specific song lined up a few years ago. And that person reached out and they said, I'd like to talk about this song. And he wanted his wife to join the conversation. And I thought, oh, that would be really cool to have a couple come on and talk about this song. It feels really fitting. But unfortunately, it never came to fruition. And sometimes that does happen. It's happened a few times. And I don't fault anyone for when that happens. But after researching this song a little bit and living with it for a few more years, I kind of liked the idea of actually talking about this song with friends. As opposed to, because there's a lot of different meanings behind the song, and I want to talk about all of them. But I just felt like maybe it was a little bit more fitting that we could talk about the power of friendship, the connection in friendship, as just one of the themes of this song. Today, we're talking about Made for Each Other. The band is Jack's Mannequin, of course. The song is track 10 from Everything in Transit, released on August 23rd, 2005. Now, it's not the last song on the album, but is the last official chapter on the album. So chapter 10, I believe it is, whereas Into the Airwaves is technically considered a bonus chapter. Now, Hazel, you know about epilogues because in your most recent book, you had like I don't know if you called it an epilogue, but it was like a bonus chapter, maybe you called it a bonus chapter, where I read your book on a Kindle, your third book on a Kindle, and then I had to download the epilogue or latest chapter.
Right. Yeah, I think that was the extended epilogue.
Extended epilogue is what it was called. Okay. The song we're talking about today is kind of the last chapter of the book or whatever you want to call it. I'm doing air quotes. But I don't know, is that something you guys think about? Is that something that when you hear these last couple songs that, Made for Each Other and Into the Airwaves, is that something you think of as, well, Made for Each Other's the final chapter, but Into the Airwaves is the bonus chapter? I've never thought about it that way, but do you guys?
I haven't. I've actually never heard the whole chapter versus, I've never heard that part, what you were talking about, the last chat. Is that like an official thing that I've missed?
I know Lindsay's got the album artwork in front of me. It says chapters on there, right?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Oh.
Again, it never really occurs to me in listening to these songs, but when you're diving into and researching a song and you start looking at these things, it's like,
What made you decide to do an extended epilogue, Hazel?
Well, there's like two reasons. One is it's called a reader magnet, where you are trying to build up your email address list in order to send people your newsletter, and it's like kind of a marketing ploy. So a lot of authors will have an extended epilogue or a bonus chapter. And in order for you to read it, you have to give me your email address and consent to me sending you an email, which I'm really bad about sending newsletters. So most people don't actually get anything. But there's that marketing part. But then also, I think people just really enjoy seeing the characters a little further in the future. And I write about a large group of friends. And so I kind of like to intertwine their lives a little bit more and give a glimpse into some of those special moments. And so that's specifically what that extended epilogue was just to kind of close their chapter, close their book with a little more detail.
Yeah, I don't think this is a spoiler to say it, but I do feel like the way you incorporated the other characters and some of what was going on in their lives at the time kind of felt like wrapping up all three of the books at once.
I try.
Yeah.
It's harder the larger. I have to keep going back and rereading things. I'm like, what did I write about that? And I try to figure it out because I don't want to contradict myself as I continue to write.
Oh,
but,
right. Yeah. Because you probably don't go back and reread your last books, right?
No, I've never fully reread them, but I do have to go back and I remember, I think I said that. And then I go and I search for a key word to try and find it. I'm like, oh, crap. Yeah. Okay. So I need to carry this piece through to this book. It's getting a little complicated, but it's good.
It's world building, right? I mean, you're creating characters in a whole world, so you gotta keep the consistency, but without repetitive overlap, I guess.
One of the ways that Hazel and I have built our friendship is I reached out to her after I had an idea to write a book myself, and mine is not a romance. So I have actually found the same struggle, Hazel, just simple things like, what color are their eyes? I forgot that I did that. Or what was the name of that street that they live on again? And so that has been really difficult for me to stay completely consistent in as well. I actually bought a separate notebook just so I could write details so that I had an easy place to flip back to look at those things.
Yes, totally. I have to do the same thing. And then when I go back once to write it down, it's like, okay, I need to just do that, be better about that as I'm writing instead of having to reference back. When Lindsay did reach out to me, I was so excited to kind of hear what she was wanting to do. And she even let me get a little glimpse into her first couple chapters. And I'm so excited that you're on this journey and you're doing it. So
yeah, it's going to be a long time coming. I'm about halfway through, so I have no current plans right now to release anything. I'm just working through the entire editing process right now, but mine is more of a near future dystopian setting with a lot about female friendships, so a little bit different of a genre.
Well, I hope that I get to read it someday, so I'll look forward to that. The song we're talking about today, Made for Each Other, MFEO. Technically, the song is split into two parts. Lindsay, when you first reached out, I remember, and both of you, by the way, reached out to me in the same, we were chatting back and forth separately in the same week, and both of you suggested this song, which is why we're all here today. But Lindsay, one of the questions you asked surprised me. You said, well, do you plan on talking about both parts of the song in one episode, or are you going to break it up over two episodes? And it just threw me off a little bit because I was like, well, I don't see how I could talk about this song in two parts. It's all one song to me.
You know why though, Steve?
Why?
This is going back to the millennial times, because I had this not as a physical CD. I downloaded it on LimeWire, or I'm pretty sure it was LimeWire. That's what I used all the time. And so Made for Each Other was labeled as chapter 10. And You Can Breathe Now was labeled as chapter 11, and Into the Airwaves was labeled as chapter 12. Yeah. So I always took it as two separate songs until I got my hands on a physical copy and realized, oh no, this is one song.
That is just so different from the way I know this song. I've never thought of it as two separate songs. I just thought of it as Made for Each Other with, I guess, two parts technically, but I don't know. What about you, Hazel? What do you see these as two different songs?
No, I think I've always kind of seen it as just one song. And honestly, I don't think I've ever even referenced to the song You Can Breathe. I just called this Made for Each Other. And I guess in the CD realm, right, you can't get to part two unless you fast forward or whatever, skip ahead a bit.
Yeah.
And so I guess, I think to me, they've always just been the one song.
Yeah, to me, it's always been Made for Each Other with what feels like a really long outro or something. I don't know. And kind of like I never paid much attention to the fact that this is chapter 10, the final quote unquote chapter before the bonus chapter on the disc. I never thought about this as two different songs either. But I do admit, when I started doing this podcast and I started looking at individual songs, and I made a spreadsheet, which we've talked about before. I have a spreadsheet with all these songs. I did look at the track listing to know whether I should put them on two separate lines. Like, are they two different tracks? I guess I don't know, because I just hit play on the CD and I didn't pay that much attention, just play it through, right? You guys both suggested this song. So besides the fact that it's a longer song, longer than average if you put the two together, and that it is split into two parts, what to you is special about this song? Why this song?
You want me to take this first?
Yeah, you can go first.
Okay. I feel like that there's such a juxtaposition between how the first part starts and how the second part ends up. It's just such an interesting thing to listen to, with it being kind of this happy-go-lucky, a bunch of teens, early 20-year-olds living together. Oh my God, we're friends. Like, we've been friends forever. Everything is great. And then this, like, it gets, I don't want to say somber. That's not quite the word I'm looking for. Maybe longing, where it's almost like discussing a relationship where you're not quite sure if you should still be in it anymore, or you've broken up and you're trying to decide if you should get back together. And so it's just like such a very interesting mix of the two.
I would say I definitely agree with that. I love how the first part one is super upbeat and just really fun. And you're on this journey with this group of people, friends. And then, yeah, the second part, that transition to the second part, which I'm sure we'll get into more. And then the love portion. So it's almost like the first part is about friends, and then maybe the second part is more of part of the love story. Yeah.
I could definitely agree with that. I mean, that's kind of along the lines I was thinking too. Well, like I said, according to the track listing, it's the final chapter, chapter 10. But a fun fact about this song that I want to talk about is that it is an 8-minute long track, but the music ends before the 7-minute mark, technically. It's Andrew McMahon's third longest song after Constantine, if I'm correct, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe if you go by music and not the length of the track, it's his third longest song recorded, Constantine being the first. Do either of you know what the second longest song is by Andrew McMahon?
It's got to be Caves.
It is Caves. It definitely is. So the music ends on Caves around the 7:20 mark, and then just like MFEO, you get some talking at the end of that track as well. The tracks are similar lengths in time, around the 8-minute mark, but Caves is technically a slightly longer song. Here's the irony in what I said earlier. I never think of this as a particularly long song. I said earlier that it's, I don't notice it as two different songs, but I never also don't think of it as a long song like Constantine Caves. Do either of you think of this as one of those epically long songs? Do you kind of put that in the same bucket or category as like, oh yeah, that's one of his long ones?
I don't think of it as an epically long song, but I was trying to listen to it, and part one, I think, was only about 2.5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had clocked, well, I didn't really clock part two. I just did some subtraction and I was like, okay, part two is then 5.5 minutes. But I didn't forget, but I just included that kind of talking at the end. So I didn't actually track how long the music is played for before he starts the little audio at the end. But also, I know this is maybe off topic and a total tangent, going back to this whole chapter thing, this is the last song. And it makes sense. And this audio is the exit to the song. And now I feel much more at peace, because for a long time I have wondered why Into the Airwaves is the last song. It's really not. It's like the deluxe version. It's the added on song at the end. And so my heart is now really happy that MFEO is the last song on the album. Now, in my eyes, in my head, that's how I'm gonna see it.
Isn't Caves the last official song on Glass Passenger, with Miss California being a bonus track, or am I mistaken?
Oh, I thought Caves was halfway through. Hold on, let's Google this.
Oh.
Yeah.
Caves is the second to last.
Yeah, I was pretty sure, because so there's talking at the end of that track, and then I remember how jarring it is to bust into Miss California after that somber ending. So actually, the first two Jack's Mannequin albums technically kind of, if you want to say, end with him talking at the end of a long track and then going into a bonus chapter, bonus track. So, which I never really put together until now. Did you confirm that? Is Caves the second to last?
Yeah.
I know Hazel starts from the end of the album, but so she would know what's at the end. Sorry, I always got to bring that up. It's so unique to me.
So Hazel, I have to say, I do think about you sometimes when I'm at work, because there's a style of note that you can write when you're in the medical field So we write a note. It's called a SOAP note. So like you talk about like why the patient's there, and then like what you're seeing, and then you give a diagnosis, and then you give your plan. But it has become popular since we've gotten on computer charting to take that assessment and plan and put it at the beginning, and then write like why the patient's there. And so I always feel like I'm reading the end of the book before I even know what's going on, which is what I feel like listening to albums backwards is. So.
Oh my gosh. I will say I have gotten more into the trying to listen through from beginning to end to see if I understand the story. But then, I go back to shuffle, or I go back and listen in my very weird specific order.
Yeah. No, I think in this day and age, it's pretty normal to shuffle them and listen to in random order and things like that. I mean, even the way they're making music, to be honest, lately, and I've heard musicians say this, that they're not putting as much thought and effort into like the order of the tracks necessarily, because that's just not how people consume them anymore.
Which is a little disappointing. And I will have to say, was it Adele's 21? Was that the one where she had really pushed Spotify to take the shuffle, like the automatic shuffle option off? Because she's like, no, I want it to be listened to in this order. That's the reason Spotify is no longer, you have to like put it on shuffle.
I thought it was her last album specifically.
Was it the last one?
Yeah, I could be wrong, but...
No, you probably are correct, but like power to her on that one, because that is awesome to still have like that, like seeing this as a body of art aspect of things, and really pushing an entire streaming service to fall in line for that is kind of cool.
Yeah, I agree that there's something to be said about it still, and I still like to consume music that way. So when there's an album out by an artist that I enjoy, I want to hear it from the start, go through the journey, and then like Hazel, eventually I'll put it on shuffle. But we talked a little bit about the end of this track and what Andrew says. We haven't talked about what he says at the end. I do want to play that clip here, so let me see if I can play it on here for you guys to hear, and we can listen together, and then we'll talk about it.
That's the record. I guess we'll keep talking. This tape's going to run out soon, and I'm going to have to go buy more, and I'm a real procrastinator, so I probably won't do that for a while. So until the next time, it's been interesting, but I'm glad that we have her done. Jack's Mannequin, everything in transit.
What do you guys make of that? Hazel, I like that. Let's start there. So you said this makes sense. It's the end of the album.
Yeah, now it does make sense, because I always wondered, why would they do that there? I remember maybe this was kind of that 2000s thing. I don't know if artists still do this kind of thing. A lot of bands would have these really long songs, but there'd be 2 or 3 minutes of absolute silence before this secret song, or maybe they would talk a little bit, would come in, and it's kind of always the last song. So it always confused me, but now I feel like I have closure on the subject.
Maybe they should have done it, that maybe Into the Airwaves should have been on the same track technically, and just 10 minutes later or something, like they did on some of those. That was big in like 90s grunge as well. Like Nirvana has one like that somewhere. Well, Nine Inch Nails had one like that, so like a weird one. I can't think of another one, but they definitely did.
Yeah, there were a lot. Like you'd hit the back button, and then a secret track would pop up on CD players. Remember that?
Yeah. In fact,
the kids will never know.
The Nine Inch Nails one was track 99 technically. You had to go from, and it was only like 8 tracks listed, and so you had to go from 8 to 99 to actually get to the song. But I think, Lindsay, you could go backwards on certain CD players and get there. This does sound like the end, and then again we get the bonus chapter. What do you think about what he said? Because I have some thoughts. There's not too much to read into here, but what do you think about what he said there?
I think it's kind of funny that he's saying I'm a real procrastinator, because, from the outside, you're like, oh my gosh, you're so accomplished. You've, been in all these bands, and so it's just funny, like people's perspectives of themselves versus how you might appear to the outside. And
did it sound to you guys, because this is what it sounds like to me, does it sound like he's just trying to take up some time? Like he has to say something, so he's just like, So this tape's going to run out soon. Then I'm going to have to go buy more. I'm a real procrastinator, so I won't do that for a while. So until next time, it's been interesting. Glad that we have her done. So it just felt like he was trying to take up time. I almost have the impression that his producer, Jim, was just like, hey, keep talking. I need you to keep talking for a moment.
Like the track needed to be a certain number of minutes and seconds long.
Maybe that, or he was testing something. I don't know. He was just like, I'm just going to let it play. Or maybe it was the opposite. Maybe Andrew noticed it was still running, and he was just like, I'll just keep talking here.
The whole go out and buy more tape thing is also interesting to me. And like, this is also, me not being in the industry, but like, I guess I didn't realize that's how that worked.
I didn't think so.
Or does it even work that way?
No, does Andrew go buy his own tape to record on?
Like bring it in and load it up? Or
good point, yeah.
That's interesting. You would think there's a person for that.
Right.
Or it's just like they're in the studio, like, here, I've, showed up for my recording time. And so now, like, what if you show up for your recording times the first time you've ever recorded and you didn't know you needed to bring tape? You have to run out and go buy it yourself?
Yeah.
Where does one buy recording tape?
My other theory on this and what he said at the end, Hazel, you pointed this out, that this seems like it's supposed to be the final track. This was probably meant to be the final track at some point, probably when they recorded it, right? So they're recording it, they get to the end, he says that, and then they decide to do other things or maybe change the direction a little bit. We know that Dark Blue is recorded later on, quite possibly Into the Airwaves was too. I haven't researched that song yet, so I don't know. So maybe Into the Airwaves either didn't exist or they didn't know they were putting it after MFEO at the time.
Well, I pulled up the track listing and the length, and it's apparently 45 minutes and 28 seconds. And I know the only reason I know this is because of Fall Out Boy's album where they talk about 45 on it. Mm-hmm. I need to think about what song that is. It's the one Jay-Z's on. Third album.
Infinity on High, Thriller.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that album.
So the reference point on if the 45 is both like an EP, was it EP is 45, like the size of it can be, but usual length is 45 minutes. And so he's at 45 minutes and 28 seconds. So really maybe he just did need to kill a little bit of time there. I don't know.
Never would have thought about it that way, but yeah, quite possibly. Who knows? Well, speaking of talking about people's words from 20 years ago, I got this quote from Andrew I want to read, and I don't honestly remember if this is from an article or if it's from that alternative press oral history of everything in transit that Lindsay and I talked about in a previous episode. But this is what he says about recording everything in transit in general. I've always seen these records as time capsules. Once I step out of it, it becomes whatever it is in the culture of the fan base. I'm glad I have a snapshot of what my life looked like before it got completely turned upside down. There's so much in my life that shifted during the making of everything in transit. I was really grateful to find the time and the space to live it and write it down. What do we think Andrew's life was like at the time? Let's try to paint a picture here. I know we've touched on it in other episodes, both with other guests, but with the two of you as well. But what do we think his life actually looked like at this time?
I mean, he talked about in the book a lot with living in an apartment with his friends from high school, which he mentions in the song. Mm-hmm. I went away to college myself from home a few hours. I know, Steve, you went away. Hazel, did you go far from your home?
I was about 40 minutes away, but I did live on campus.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like what I hear in this song is like very similar to experiences that I had while I was away at college. Like, you're finding out who you are as an adult and you're making like stupid choices and mistakes and stuff with your friends who are the same age that are encouraging you to do those stupid things. And it like is helping guide and shape you. But then like I look back now at almost 40 and I'm like, oh my God, we did so many dumb things and that was stupid. But like, oh my gosh, how much fun did we have? Right. And like, I kind of feel like this is the epitome of that, where he was just like, living this very carefree life, and maybe didn't have a lot of money but enough to get by and really foster those friendships, because when you're living in close quarters with people and you don't have a lot of money to just like go out and blow and whatnot, it's usually making your own fun at home, and it leads to some really, really fun nights
and days and early mornings when you stay up all night too. I remember those times. I think that, they were basically just like sleeping when they wanted. They weren't on like a schedule. They were sleeping when they wanted, partying when they wanted, hanging out, eating when they wanted. Just like everything was, I think they had all this freedom. And he alluded to that in that alternative press interview as well, that it was just all this like freedom to kind of do whatever you want, whenever you wanted. He probably had some, not that musicians make a whole lot of money, this way, but like he probably had a little bit of something corporate money, which was more than the average, 21-year-old had. So he got to kind of do what he wanted for a while. So that's kind of what I imagine too. Just a little bit of production stuff. Something pretty cool about, we've talked about how this is split into two parts, but in the liner notes, and Lindsay, since you have it in front of you, you probably have noticed this, that there's actually some different musicians that play on each of the different parts, which definitely means that they recorded them at different times, right? Playing on both parts. Andrew McMahon, of course, Jim Wirt on the bass guitar, Tommy Lee on the drums, CJ Erickson with the programming, just like most of the album, right? But the difference is that on part one, Made for Each Other, a guy named Brian Kaufman plays the guitar, whereas on part two, You Can Breathe, Bobby Raw plays the guitar. And then in part one, but not part two, you have Patrick Warren playing the organ and the Chamberlin, and he did some string and horn samples, which I absolutely noticed in this song. The horn samples especially are not subtle in the first part of this song.
So with the horns, Steve, what does it make you think of before I show you this photo? Like when you hear the horns, what is, like, do you envision anything, or does it?
Oh yeah, I was going to bring this up. The Beatles. I think of the Beatles. I don't get a visual, but I think of the Beatles' later era work when I hear those horns.
How about you, Hazel?
There's horns. I'm gonna have to listen for that.
I always got very much like a party atmosphere kind of thing, although I get the Beatles, but this is the artwork for it in the book.
Does it say Happy New Year?
Yeah. So
I didn't
like
notice
a New
that.
Year's party.
Oh, I can see the Happy New Year crowns. Okay, and the party hats.
Yep.
Huh. That is not in the CD booklet. I don't think. If it is, it's more subtle. Maybe because it's smaller. I don't know. But yeah, I never noticed that if I've seen that before. That's pretty cool. So interesting. So a New Year's celebration to kind of represent this song. I would argue this song, and I think Hazel may have said this earlier. Did you say it sounds like a party, or maybe?
Yeah. Like fun and upbeat. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The first half, of course, the first part. Yeah. We may have already touched on this, but I'm going to throw it out. So we talked about what was special about the song, why we're talking about today. Do either of you have like a specific memory or specific connection in your life with this song? Is this something that reminds you of something or somewhere or someone or, a time in your life or anything?
I don't. I guess I'm hoping in July at Red Rocks, this will maybe become a specific memory.
I have very high hopes for you there. I mean, I do think that will come true. Yes.
Yeah, I think it just again, a lot of the music from this album reminds me a lot of my freshman year of college. So it just has a lot of ties to where I was at in my life at that time, as far as like our friends and that kind of carefree nature. And, we were all working in, various form of retail jobs and just like, very variable schedules, but at shorter shifts. And so like sometimes it'd be like 3 p.m. and someone's throwing a house party, or it's 9 o'clock at night and everyone's getting off of work and someone's like, hey, do you want to come down the street to my apartment? I'm going to make spaghetti, or whatever. And we recently hosted a bunch of our college friends. We're very close with them all still, to our house over the weekend. And we were all talking about how much we missed that environment now that, we're within an hour of each other still, which is wonderful. But not the ability of just being like calling each other up at 9:00 at night. Hey, do you want to come over? Because people have like, kids and families and jobs and things like that. So some of that lack of responsibility, I think, is what that reminds me of the most.
Yeah. Ironically, so when this album came out, I was just out of college. So ironically for me, I could kind of feel the way that they're describing that what we think the song's about, just kind of like living day to day, or this album's about in general, kind of living day to day, not much responsibility, just hanging out with your friends, working odd jobs. That's kind of what I was living at the time, honestly, because I graduated college. I didn't get a job in my field right away. So we were just kind of living in an apartment with friends and just kind of having fun all the time. And yeah, it could just be a party in the middle of the day as long as we didn't have to work that day. So the irony comes in that I've always thought of this song as a love song. So I wasn't really thinking of this song as that back then. It occurred to me more recently that it's more like a party, more like a hanging out with your friends type of song, at least in part one. Hazel brought up Red Rocks. Let's talk about live shows, and I'll just start off with the live history of the song. This song's been performed live 181 times total, according to Setlist FM anyway. 132 of those times are by Jack's Mannequin, including the most recent performance in Venice, California last month, and 49 of those times were by Andrew McMahon or Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness. This is one of the most fun facts I found out about the live history of this song. According to Andrew's online blog in 2005, this song's live debut was May 11th, 2005. Now, normally I wouldn't know that about a song. But what's really cool about that era, and I wasn't around for that in the way that I wasn't reading his online blog at the time. I've just found it 5 years ago. But he actually wrote that night in his blog, hey, we replaced, and I'm not quoting him, I'm just saying pretty much I'm paraphrasing what he said. They replaced Holiday from Real and Kill the Messenger in the set lists with some new songs called Into the Airwaves and Made for Each Other. May 11th, 2005 was the debut of those two songs. As we all know, that was just a month before he couldn't tour anymore. He had to take a break and, go through treatment for his cancer diagnosis. So I don't know much about set lists from that era, but I do know that. I always think it's fun when I can find those nuggets of like, okay, I can confirm that that's actually when that happened. So in this case, I'm very certain of that. Also, when Andrew played this song on piano for us during the lockdown of 2020 on Instagram, it was the last one he played that night in April 2020. And I went back and watched that recently. I don't know if you guys had a chance to do that, but I went back and watched it. At the very end, Cecilia and Kelly walk in toward the end of the song. And he said, these are my MFEOs right here. So I thought that was sweet. In a recent Rolling Stone interview that came out last month, I'll link it in the show notes, Andrew was asked if he'll play both parts in the set list on this tour. He said, quote, they don't work independently of each other. That's a 10-minute voyage and will remain so. With the transit songs, I've done this top to bottom thing before where we play the record in order. I'm a little less inclined towards that. Who knows, maybe one night we'll get weird and just do it. But what I learned during the Something Corporate tour is there's something sort of magical about finding ways to bring songs from one record into the set list against a song from another, and see the evolution of how these themes in the songwriting or the production evolved, or the band did. But also, how a lot of these themes are so closely tied together from one project to the next. It'll be the challenge, but I think it'll be what makes the show really special. So as we mentioned earlier, this song was performed on the Holiday from Real cruise during the Sail Away show, which we'll come back to. But before we go there, Hazel, have you seen this song performed live yet? Or is this the year it's going to happen?
This is the year. It is coming.
Yeah, no, I fully believe that for you. I have no doubt about it. You can't name a tour after a song and not play the song on the tour, right? So I think he'll be, by the time Red Rocks comes around, he'll have played it a few times, I think. So I think that'll be in the set list. But you've never seen this one live before, huh?
Nope. And I even I was like, I don't think so. And then I went and checked FM, and because I've never seen Jack's Mannequin really live. And so he hasn't performed it as, Andrew McMahon.
Yeah.
Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness.
Right. I mean, according to Setlist FM, it's only been 49 times total as a band. So it's very unlikely that you would have. Lindsay, how about you? I know you've seen it live because I was there the last time you saw this one live. Do you have a specific memory of this song in particular on that cruise? We've already talked about kind of what that looked like, but do you remember this one coming on and what your reaction was?
Yeah, I do actually. So thank you for sending the video that whoever uploaded it to YouTube. Great job, friends.
Yeah.
Keep doing what you're doing. I remembered seeing it because I remember it coming on and being like, oh my God. So that's the second time I've seen it. The first time being the pod show when they did the full album playthrough. Mm-hmm. But that's it for me. And I just remember being ecstatic to see it because I honestly had not been expecting that because of it being a longer song. You know, we were talking before about, do you see this as being a long song or not? And I don't when I listen to it because of how variable it is. Kind of back to what Hazel said about Constantine is, you know, generally a pretty consistent song the whole way through. It doesn't have a lot of changes to it. This one, I think because the horns, you know, come in and out and how everything sounds, it doesn't seem long when you're listening to it, but knowing that it is and it never gets played on set list, that's why I consider it a long song. I mean, actually, if you want to think about it, if he were to do Constantine, this, and Caves, that's basically a festival set, right?
Yeah, yeah. That'd be 35 minutes. Yeah, easy.
Yeah,
So in that quote from Rolling Stone, I noticed that he said it's a 10-minute journey or whatever he said. And we know it's not a 10-minute song, but I did notice in the live recording, they play it for about 9 minutes. They do extend it out. Bobby does some guitar work, which highly recommended before the 9-minute mark, by the way. Just got to put a plug in for that. Check out that video. I will post it in the show notes. I will echo what Lindsay said. Thank you to whoever took that video because I'm not typically good at taking videos at shows. I usually take like one per set, and that's not the one I picked this time. So I'm glad someone captured it all. Thank you. But check that video out because great guitar solo by Bobby and kind of extended outro. It was really, really cool. I am 100% confident we're going to see the song this year. We're going to, you know, I know we're all going to shows, Jack's Mannequin shows this year. Hazel, I know you're going to Red Rocks. Actually, Lindsay, you're going to Red Rocks as well. I'm the only one here not going to Red Rocks, but
Yes.
Yeah, right, yeah. No. Especially after the recent Rock Boat experience, I was like, you know, I got to cut somewhere. And I'm really like feeling actually good about the fact that I did not commit to a trip out to Red Rocks. So especially with the Jack's Mannequin tour dates dropping, it made me feel even better. I was like, okay, I can see them locally. And then I will just, you know, be, you know, watching social media a whole lot in July when you guys are all enjoying that show. Did you guys get tickets to any other shows besides Red Rocks when the tour dates dropped recently?
Yeah, I got. I'll see them in San Francisco.
We chatted about this, Hazel. You're lucky in the way that he always comes to San Francisco, right? Like he's not going to miss that city.
Right, and I think if he wasn't coming, that I'd drive down to Southern California. But I think even 2 tours ago, I forget the name of the tour, I think he actually played in Central California in Paso Robles, which was kind of an odd spot. And I would totally drive there for a show. So I think if he wasn't in San Francisco, there'd be something close enough for me to drive or fly to with enough notice. Okay. Not the Venice pop-up show.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. On a Monday night, no less.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of, there was, looking at the tour dates, there were several Midwest dates, and honestly, they were not great for our family schedule. There's a conflict with every single one in the way that something will have to be sacrificed or adjusted to make any of them work for us. So I'm trying to make a couple work, but life gets in the way. Can't all be concerts, unfortunately. But so I'm gonna sneak my way to Columbus because it's close by, and Detroit as well. Maybe another one. We'll see. How about you, Lindsay? Did you get tickets for any shows on this tour? I know you did, but
I did. Yeah, I did. I was, working with Steve to help make sure that he also got tickets this
Thank
tour
you for that.
because of, no problem.
I was on a boat in the middle of the ocean with no internet.
Yeah, craziness like that.
I was wondering because you had mentioned, you said I have things lined up. So people are going to take care of me. So, aw.
Yeah, we were
I'm a
doing
lucky
our
person.
best to make sure. Yeah, I am still kicking around the idea of St. Louis, for multiple reasons. One, it's not a bad drive. Two, we've got some friends down there to see. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I was super happy and impressed with how many Midwest dates came out and how many will work.
There's so many.
Obviously Chicago. And for those of you that haven't gotten tickets yet, I believe that there are still Chicago tickets left. And if you're in the Midwest and you're thinking about it, or if you just want to jump on a plane from California, Hazel, Salt Shed is fantastic. It is one of my favorite venues in all of Chicago. It's outdoors. It's beautiful. The Chicago River's right there. The setup for it, we were at a concert there last summer, and it's phenomenal. I cannot begin to say enough about how great it is. We went to the bathroom expecting to, miss part of the show, and they have the sound piped in perfectly, throughout the whole, it was so wonderful. They have little shops along the side. They had a record store that was set up that you could go buy vinyls while you were there. It's just utterly phenomenal. I hate to give away any secrets, which I know is not really, but if you're even a little bit considering coming to Salt Shed, I cannot speak more highly of it.
Thanks, Lindsay. I technically have a ticket thanks to Lindsay, and I just told her earlier this week or maybe at the end of last week, I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to make that one. I hate that, but family stuff. So
what did you think? I don't know if you guys noticed. Well, I guess you did because you bought a ticket to it, Steve, but what did you think about 11/11 going on sale with the tour?
Really confused by that because I thought that's something they always announced and made a big deal about at the beginning of the kickoff of Dear Jack fundraising season, which is beginning of August every year. So I wasn't sure what that's all about. Anywhere officially that I've seen it, they haven't called it the Dear Jack benefit, from my understanding, but it's just on the tour on that date. Is that right?
That's my understanding.
Yeah, it's not called the Dear Jack benefit. I was surprised and impressed that it's taking place in Detroit, though. That's my hometown, so I thought that was pretty cool. And even though it's a midweek type of show, it makes it a little bit more accessible for me, the fact that I have family, a place to stay, and it's only 3.5 hours from our house. So definitely going to make that one.
The Detroit that you got tickets is, I guess I didn't realize that. So you have tickets to 11/11 show.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Compliments of Lindsay again.
I'm speculating wildly here, but do we think when he said one show we might get weird and do a full album playthrough, it would be that one?
Oh, he did say that in Rolling Stone, and that seems most likely. Because it's not going to be Red Rocks, right? He's already said he's not doing a full album playthrough at Red Rocks.
That's my understanding. It's all three bands, kind of, maybe?
Kind of intermixing the sets, not independent sets, is my understanding, from what he said on 2 different Camp Wilderness Zooms now. So it can't be that one. So yeah, I don't know. I could definitely see it to make it special because, I don't know, they don't always on 11/11, but sometimes they do something a little bit unique or special, and I guess that would be the time to do it. I mean, it's definitely a Jack's Mannequin set this year.
So does that make you want to come to it now, Hazel?
I mean, what are the dates for your show in Chicago you're trying to sell me on?
Well, they take place at 2 different times a year, so you can go to the Midwest twice this year. June 20th in Chicago, 11/11 in Detroit,
Okay.
I know how hard it is to fly across the country because I price flights all the time, while I'm just dreaming about all the travel I'm going to do. And I'm just like, wow, flights are so expensive. Maybe you can find a deal.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Lindsay, you must be, being that Made for Each Other, you've proclaimed that as your favorite Andrew McMahon song in the last episode, right?
I did.
You've got to be pretty excited that probably every time you see Andrew McMahon this year, they're going to play that song.
I am very excited about this. I'm hoping that maybe that will make up for all the times that I haven't seen it on a playlist, which I'm sure it will.
What'd you guys think of the social media game? Did you guys participate in that? So that was before I got on the cruise, so I was able to participate in that. And so for those who aren't aware, I'll just kind of give a brief rundown of what that was. So they had this game where if you emailed the management, correct me if I'm wrong on how this worked, if you emailed the management and told them what city you're closest to, they would email you back with the location of the nearest tour date. And then you could share that on social media with a picture they sent you. And then you were to connect with other fans via an Instagram chat to make connections basically among other people going to the same show. Is that in a nutshell, or is there something I'm missing there? Because it was honestly kind of a blur for me right before I left for Miami.
I think the one thing was with your picture, you had to include a hashtag, and that was how you found the other participants.
That's right. MFEO tour, right?
Yeah, and then you'd go search the hashtag and look for people who had the same number, and then you would send them a message to connect.
I'd say I connected with 10 or 11 people before I got on the cruise ship. And then some people responded while I was gone. And again, I didn't have internet, so I couldn't respond to them until like 5 days later. But I did send in my connections, and you could win. So you could win a pair of tickets, I think, is how it worked. I did not win, but you could win a pair of tickets. They were going to pick one randomly from each city. Neither of you won the tickets, right? I know I didn't.
No.
No.
I've heard of people winning. I know people were given tickets, but none of them were here. So
Yeah. Well, we know the St. Louis winners.
mm-hmm.
I feel like the whomever won in Chicago, I think we know. I think we recognize the name, but I'm blanking on who it is now. But
Okay.
Steph and Stu won. Stewie and Steph won the St. Louis one.
Oh,
so you
very
can cut
cool.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. I think it was a real cool opportunity, but also a neat way to engage fans amongst each other. And what I found the most genius thing about the whole ordeal is it was the fans that shared the tour dates. They didn't come directly from the management or from Andrew or any kind of promotional post on their social medias. It was hundreds of or more fans sharing the locations of the concerts. And so I just thought that was kind of a genius way to roll this out, and not only engage the fans, but also kind of blow up social media with this kind of underground announcement.
The other cool thing about it, because I think we started getting smarter about how we were doing this later on. And like once I knew where it was and what date, I tagged Salt Shed on mine. But people would see it and they'd be like, wait, what city do you have? Where are you going? And then they're like, oh, I'm looking for this city. And then you're like, oh, my friend so-and-so lives over here. Like, let me get you connected with them and they'll have the information for you. So that was fun. I also don't know if you guys had the same experience I had, which is where I realized that the Midwest contingency is small and strong, because every single person that I connected with, I was like, oh, hey, oh, look, it's Lisa. Oh, people that I knew. And it was really, really fun to get to send each other messages, because you're like, since the cruise, it's been like really nice to get to talk to each other here and there and like get that excitement built back up again.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Lindsay, how many people did you connect with in that game?
So I think that what was it supposed to be 10 max, right? You could connect with up to 10.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there was a maximum number of screenshots you could do. So like to get the maximum number of points. And I think that I stopped submitting at one point because I'm like, well, I've already hit my number, and I was still getting messages from people. Mm-hmm. So I think it was somewhere between like 20 and 25 maybe messages I got. Yeah.
That is, yeah, because I was scouring. I was like every couple hours I was going back to look. There's only 8 of us for San Francisco. Cause I swear I connected, or they reached out to me, or I reached out to them, connected with everybody. And so I thought my chances were good, but not good enough. But it's okay. I got tickets anyway. But it was really fun to just randomly message people. Hey.
It was. It made it not as weird. Like, it would be a little weird just to randomly reach out. Hey, I see you're going to the Columbus show. But it wasn't weird because it was part of the game.
Right.
Did you guys do any video chats with people that you didn't know?
I didn't. Did you?
I did.
I did. Yeah.
You both did?
Yes, I did.
How did that? Tell me how that went. I'm curious.
So I ended up connecting with a guy who actually concert Popline podcast.
Yeah, Steve Jones.
Yeah. And so he had messaged me and he said, hey, I've heard you on the Something in the Wilderness podcast last week. And so we ended up Zooming for the extra bonus points. And I was like, hey, nice to meet you. We literally live 20 minutes away from each other. So it was just kind of funny to piece that together. That was the only person I Zoomed with.
I've thought of the two of you in wondering if you guys have seen each other at the same shows. I'm certain you've been at the same shows, right? Because you live in the same city. But wow, I mean, your area is a big metro area, and you guys live that close. That's pretty wild.
Yeah. So that was fun.
Yeah.
But nobody else was. There was one other person we were trying to connect, and the timing just didn't work. But
yeah, I mean, I Zoomed with a lot of people that we knew because we knew each other. So that was easy. But I did have Colin was someone I recognized him, I think, from being at shows before. Like, his face looked familiar to me, but I'd never talked to him before. But he was super cool. We did a quick Zoom session and everything. So, or
That's
Instagram
awesome.
video, I guess.
Yeah. That's just so neat. I mean, and now when you see these people at the shows, like Hazel, hopefully you'll run into Steve at one of the shows, this one or maybe another one, and then Lindsay, if you happen to see that guy that you didn't know before, at least you can say hi. It's another person to say hi. Hey, what's up? Like, just what I love about going to Andrew's shows now is I always see at least someone I recognize, even if it was just like someone I saw across a room at a prior show. But I was able to connect with people I did know that I have met, like either on the cruise or at a prior show. Also people that I've just randomly chatted with, like for the purposes of the podcast or whatever. People that knew that I'm from the Columbus area because I mentioned it. It was just kind of neat to reconnect with some people, but also connect with new people as well. It was almost kind of overwhelming, especially with my timing, because again, I was flying to Miami at like 6 the next morning. And so like late at night, I was still like chatting people back. And I told my wife, I was like, so I've got like 10 chats going with like different Andrew fans in the Columbus area, or actually some of them were from Indianapolis and Cincinnati, because that's, again, what they were given as the closest tour date. So they're not all from Columbus. Yeah, so I thought that was a fun game. I'll preface this with, I put out on Instagram, if there's any topics of conversation that Lindsay and Hazel and I should discuss, what should we talk about? And all the responses I got were related to the tour. So, so a lot of this is focused around the tour, I understand. So I'll ask another fun question. What's another like dream song or dream set of songs that if you got to pick on the set list that you'd like to see from Jack's Mannequin this year?
So I wrote mine out because I was like tried to think it through, and I was okay. As much as I love Everything in Transit, there are songs on the Glass Passenger and People and Things that I would love to hear. The Resolution, Restless Dream, Cell Phone, Casting Lines, Hammers and Strings, and My Racing Thoughts.
Good choices. I think it's possible for that they could play any one of those songs. And that's kind of what that, going back to an earlier topic, that's what that initial January pop-up show in Venice showed me. The set list from that show showed me. I was like, okay, maybe we could get anything. We don't even know what we could get.
Yeah, I just pulled that set list up and I'm like, yep, that was on there. Yep, that one was on there too.
Yeah. I love that. I love thinking that it could be anything. Not every tour is like that. Not every tour from every band that we go see is like that. You kind of know. I mean, there's bands, we've talked about where they kind of play the same set every time and sometimes tour after tour. I like that it's kind of up in the air with this one. We don't know what we're going to get. I will be avoiding set lists once the June leg starts until I get to see, hopefully, assuming I get to see a June date. I guess that's still undetermined, but if I get to see a June date. If I'm not actually going to a concert in June, I'll probably just look at the set list because likely I would assume that's going to change by the time he comes back in November. So,
would either of you be disappointed if like Holiday from Real or La 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 or Dark Blue didn't make the set list? Like if the normal ones that we normally hear, Mixtape, all of those, let's say he doesn't play a single one of those, and instead the entire set list is things like Release Me and Amy I and all that. Like, would that be disappointing to you or would that be exciting for you?
Yeah, I don't think I would mind. Because I have heard him play those through other sets and other times. There might be one or two that I would be sad. But I think in general, I think I'd maybe be okay with that.
Yeah, my answer was going to be, well, it depends on which of those you're going to cut. But then you said all of them. I was like, well, wait a second. Hold on now. But yeah, I think I could be excited for that because the difference in what you're talking about is the songs that he's played a lot with Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness, which I've seen a lot, versus the songs that he didn't really play with Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness, at least not much. And yeah, I'd be okay with that to kind of go back to the era. I know that's not going to happen. Obviously, he's got to play Dark Blue and the Mixtape and the Resolution. I assume he's got to play those, but who knows? They could shake it up. I assume there'll be the same set of 10, 12 songs, maybe, 15, and then like there'll be between 3 to 5 that will be different on each couple of dates or each date or something like that. But I don't know that I'd want to lose them, but I would be okay with it. I'd be like, if the concert ended and I didn't hear the mixtape, I'd be like, that's okay, because I've seen that a lot. But I do love that song.
Do you think you would notice that you were missing it at that time, or would you just be so blown away about getting to see songs you never get to see that you'd hit the end and you're like, wait a second?
Oh, come on. This fan base. It's we're never satisfied. Like, of course, by the end, we'd be like, what about the mixtape? Like, from my perspective on that topic, the way I know a concert is coming to an end is when they start playing the fan favorite or the hit, whatever you want to call it, depending on the artist. Usually, if they haven't played Dark Blue yet, I know there's another song, right? So he's not, even through the Wilderness era, he's not going to go a set without playing Dark Blue, I don't think. And so that's kind of how I was gauged. Okay, the show's not over yet. And I would say the same is true for mixtape, especially when we're looking at Jack's Mannequin specifically. I don't know if the Resolution's going to make that list. I assume it will, where it's going to be played a lot. I think I would note it. So yes, I would definitely notice. How about you, Hazel?
I think I'd notice, but I probably wouldn't like be sad until I left. And I think I'd be like, oh, wait, they didn't play that song. So I think in the moment, I think I'd be content. And I'm sure I'd be fairly content afterward, but that's when it would hit me. Like, oh shoot, they didn't play that.
I've definitely had that experience at several concerts, not just Andrew McMahon, but just in general. Like, it's the drive home or whatever. You're like, oh, wait a second. They didn't play my favorite song. What the heck?
Yeah.
Now, Steve, did you happen to look at the Venice set list in its entirety? Because when I sent it to you, I had altered it.
That's hilarious that you did. Thank you so much for doing that. So Lindsay knows how particular I am about how I don't want to see the set list, but I'm like, I'm not waiting 5 months to find out what's on the set list. Like, it's gonna come up. But I really appreciate you going through the pains of blacking out all the other songs, except you wanted to show me that they played Out of It, which was just so funny. I did get that on the cruise because you sent it to Marcy, who did have internet. So I looked at, she showed me, she's like, this is what Lindsay sent. And I just laughed, like, of course. But yeah, I couldn't resist when I got off of the ship and I had my own internet on my phone. I did look, or I think it came up on someone's Instagram, and I was like, what the heck, I'm going to look. And I was like, oh my God. And I think I even chatted you and other people. I was like, what? They played this song? They played this song? I just can't believe all these deep cuts they played. This is insane.
I just think it's funny that you brought up, like, if Dark Blue hasn't been played yet, I know there's still a song left, and I'm, like, looking at this, and before the encore, the second to last song was Dark Blue. So
yeah.
You're on the pattern, I guess.
Yeah. I think it was New Friends in Grand Rapids 2 years ago that, again, it's kind of like getting caught up in the moment and they're playing the songs you want to hear. And I think I was in that mode. I actually forgot about Dark Blue. And so it's getting to the end of the show and I was like, okay, winding down, cool. And then they played Dark Blue and I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot about Dark Blue. Of course they're going to play Dark Blue. And they either ended with it or it was the last one before the encore. I think the second New Friends show I saw in Columbus, I think they either ended with it also or it was the second to last song or something. So, but I expected it that time. I guess let's go back to the subject of the song for a moment in relation to the tour. Were either of you, when they dropped all the kind of promotional social media for this tour, were either of you surprised that they called it the MFEO tour?
Yeah, very.
I didn't expect that.
I feel like the song isn't played very often, so it was surprising to me that would be the headline. But I guess it makes sense because if Holiday from Real is for the cruise, that was the start, right? And like this is the end theoretically, except for Into the Airwaves.
Oh, I like that.
Good point. I did not even think about it that way. So yeah, first and last, sort of. I mean, Into the Airwaves, I guess that could be a tour name. Yeah. I mean, what the heck? I mean, yeah, with the lyrics especially, but a topic for a different episode, obviously. It didn't seem like the natural one to use, but I kind of like it. I kind of like that they picked. It kind of made me more excited. Like, ooh, we're kind of going a little deeper here. We're not, it's not the mixtape. It's not, I'm Ready. It's not Holiday from Real. It's, it's Made for Each Other. It's like one of the last tracks on the album. That's pretty cool. Did you guys also notice, this also surprised me, I learned the other night, specifically on the Camp Wilderness Zoom, but I guess it'd come up before that Zach will not be touring with Jack's Mannequin, at least playing on stage with Jack's Mannequin. Did you guys know that?
I had heard that. I think I must have seen it in the somebody posted a really nice recap of everything that was discussed, or maybe that was on the Discord. I don't remember one of them, but I think I remember hearing that, and I was kind of surprised.
Yeah.
I'm a little sad about it. I get it, right? Like I understand why, because he wasn't originally with Jack's Mannequin, and I get performing as a band, because then what would be the difference between like Andrew McMahon and the Wilderness versus Jack's Mannequin? Mm-hmm. But I really like seeing Zach perform, so I'm a little sad about it, but it's okay. He'll be back for the next one, I'm sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he hadn't toured with something corporate, but that's what the surprising part is, that he toured with something corporate, but I don't know, maybe he has other plans, and that's fair. Or maybe they have another plan for this tour, making it a little bit different from something corporate. But I do know on the Camp Wilderness Zoom, he talked about how someone asked him if he'd be riding the La La Llama, and he said, well, it'll be hard for me to leave the stage to ride the llama or go down in the crowd because I'm one of 4 instruments now. Mm-hmm. And he didn't say this part, but I just know that I felt like Zach Clark being with something corporate on stage really kind of filled in the gaps that would have been there when he got up from his piano. And really, in general, not even when Andrew was sitting at the piano, really filled out the sound with Zach on his keys in the back. So it'll be interesting. I know maybe they're just, trying something different with this. I'm not sure, but that did surprise me.
So is this an opportunity for him to set a piano on fire in another location again?
Oh, yeah. I think he said he would never do that again. But hey, we got some outdoor venues. I mean, is that allowed at an outdoor venue? I don't know.
I don't think it is.
Yeah, probably not.
Okay.
Still not acceptable. Definitely not an indoor venue. Thank you for not setting anything on fire in an indoor venue. I don't know. I mean, Green Day had pyrotechnics at Blink-182 had pyrotechnics at when we were young. Mm-hmm. To put a little bit of lighter fluid on a piano and light it. I mean, what's the big deal?
Actually, Fall Out Boy, I don't know if you've gone to one of their shows recently, but even when we were at Riot Fest last year, like the amount of pyrotechnics they have is insane. And I mean, they do that in indoor. Like, doesn't he shoot fire? Pete Wentz shoots fire out of his bass indoors. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I forgot about that. I did see them at Bunbury about 6-7 years ago, and he did that. And I was surprised by that because I think that's the only time I've ever seen Fall Out Boy. So I was like, I didn't know that was a Fall Out Boy thing. I don't know. Are we good on live shows, tour, or is there anything else that we should cover there?
I'm good.
I think we're good.
All right. A little bit of songwriting here. The song was written solely by Andrew McMahon. In a recent Rolling Stone interview that I referenced earlier, Andrew was asked why he decided to call this upcoming tour the MFEO tour. So here's our answer. When they asked him why he decided to name the tour after Made for Each Other, he said, "The reality of Jack's Mannequin, and truthfully all of my music, is it's a love story. This record charted a breakup to a marriage to figuring it out as a couple." I'm paraphrasing, by the way. To figuring it out as a couple. There's that element that just so wound up into all these songs. It's about my bandmates, too. These guys that stuck with me through thick and thin. We tested our relationships and survived, and we're here. It's also about the fans. This project wouldn't have existed if it weren't for that depth of bond from people who followed me from something corporate into the project and people who found this project. It is a love story on so many levels, and I wanted to bring that positivity and that energy onto the stage and into these rooms surrounding everything that we do for the next year. Again, I'd mentioned this earlier. In recent years, this has struck me as more of a relationship song with his friends than about his relationship with Kelly. But I know we're going to get into lyrics very shortly here. But what do you guys think about that? Is there, Hazel? I heard you mention earlier, and I agreed with you that part 1 is about his friends. Part 2 is about Kelly. Is that kind of where we stand on it, or is there any differing thoughts?
I think that was where I was going with that.
Okay. Yeah, that's where I landed too. Lindsay, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I have the liner notes in front of me, the thank you. Have you read that at all, Steve?
I have not. Let's hear it.
Each of these songs was lived and recorded thanks to a small group of people who looked out for me this past year. Those people are Adam Trejo, Ryan Daniels, Brent Sine, Scott Delorme, Jen Levitt, Jamie Whittick, Aaron Dixon, Kevin Page, Brian Ireland, Josh Partington, Aaron D, Andy, Adam O, Dan D, Micah G, JJ, Bobby, my parents, my brothers and sisters, and the rest of my amazing family. And I apologize if I mispronounced any of those last names. But yeah, I think that kind of solidifies our thought process on it.
I didn't hear Kelly's name in there.
He didn't say Kelly's name.
Okay,
No.
just making sure. I didn't miss it. Yeah, well, I mean, they were separated at the time, right? So it's maybe not. Maybe it didn't feel appropriate.
Or maybe it's elsewhere in this. I mean, it's a very long page, and I read one paragraph out of it, so she may be mentioned elsewhere.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the vinyl liner notes are more extended than the CD. Either that or it's just so small in the CD that I can't read it, because I don't remember that. From the oral history of everything in transit video, I learned that Andrew went and lived with his friends for a summer, like Lindsay, you mentioned that earlier. And then he basically said in that there was a lot of self-reflection, a lot of freedom, a lot of inspiration, with a backdrop of California. That's, again, kind of paraphrasing what he said in that video there. He said he felt fearless, and then he knew he was writing the best songs of his career, which I think a lot of fans would agree with, that, at that point in time, it was the best thing he had done. Even with all the something corporate that we love behind him at that point. I don't know, you guys have both written, or Lindsay, you've started writing a book, and Hazel, you've written a couple. What would that be like to just be fearless? You can make the art that you just want to make. You're not worried about anyone else's judgment. You're just kind of writing because that's what the inspiration is telling you to do. What is that like?
It's scary, I think, to put art out there. And, I think I've struggled with that for each of my books. Just worrying, what will people think? Will people judge me? Knowing that there will be people who don't like what I've written or, thinks it's horrible. And I just try to, remind myself to ignore that noise, and that there are people who are supportive, and that at the end of the day, the stories I'm writing are for myself, really, and something I feel like I need to share, or I want to write about, and it means something to me, and it's okay if not everybody likes it. Saying that and believing it are two very different things, and it's this kind of vicious cycle that sort of you go through. And I think pushing, submit is the hardest part. Is like, okay, I'm doing it. And you can always turn back, but it's hard.
Have you seen some of these times where Andrew's real candid on Camp Wilderness, or probably he's done this in interviews too, where he says some of the same things that you're saying. He's like, I don't know if people are going to like it. Are they going to keep coming back? It's a scary. He said some of the same things you just said, that it's scary, kind of putting art out into the world and wondering, I don't know if people even going to like this. Have you seen him say that?
I haven't. I will tell you, I don't get on to many of those Zooms or lives on Camp Wilderness, but I think it's probably something that everybody, who I would think, even someone who, an artist with like a painting or a drawing, everybody interprets stuff so differently that there's bound to be haters,
right?
In anything. But I think like imposter syndrome for sure, like not feeling like you're good enough, and it messes with you. So you stay away from reviews. Like, I don't read reviews necessarily.
I think that all is valid, though, and something that I appreciated with what you've done with this podcast too is even when we're talking about the songs, and even if there's songs that maybe it's not our favorite one, right? Or there are things that you can't relate to in there. The one thing I think that you've always done really well is to understand that was still art that Andrew created. And it meant something to him, and it's personal to him in a way that maybe the rest of us can't understand. And you've been very kind in the critiques and the discussions that you've had in validating anybody that's joined you on the podcast's feelings about it without tearing Andrew down. And I think that that's when we start talking about art, a very difficult thing to accomplish, because it's easy to not like something or not agree with something and then just tear the whole thing to shreds. And I think that's really unfair. Mm-hmm. What I've noticed in going through this writing process, because again, I'm still in the earlier stages of this and I've got rewrites to go and everything, is there are certain chapters that I write that I've known where I wanted the story to start, and I've known where I've wanted it to end, and I've known the themes I wanted it to encompass, but I don't necessarily know how a chapter is going to go until I'm in the process of writing it. And some flow really nicely, and I'll sit down and a couple hours later I'm done with it. And then some are just this struggle for weeks. And I think that, you know, when we talked the last time, I was alluding to the fact that like Andrew wrote this whole album by himself, and like it's incredible to me because I literally had a meltdown before we met with the editor the last time, and I was like, I suffered through this chapter for 3 weeks. It sucks. I hate everything about it. I hate, like, this wasn't what I was trying to write. This wasn't the conversation I wanted the characters to have. And she's like, it's okay. Like, we'll look at this together and we'll figure it out. And then she like came back and she's like, I see where you're trying to go. Like, you need to think about, you know, these kind of things. And I was like, and then, you know, it all came together. And so I can't imagine doing a whole body of work that's this good by myself, you know? So I don't know. How do you feel about that, Hazel?
No, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Since you both have full-time careers that aren't right, you know, your lifestyle or your livelihood, this is the word I'm looking for. Your livelihood isn't based around the books you write. Does it make you feel more boundless to write what you want, to write what you feel, and not have to worry about whether this will hit or whatever? Like maybe a musician like Andrew has to maybe take some of that in consideration now at this point in his career. Like, I'm writing for me, I'm writing with producers, but I'm also like, and then he has those thoughts like, this is my livelihood too. So I think it's a little bit different in a, you know, maybe when your livelihood doesn't depend on it. Does that play a factor? Is that a thing?
I think probably to a point where you have a little more freedom, because it's like, well, if this sucks, it sucks. And it doesn't, you know, that is what it is, because I'm not making a ton of money doing this and I'm not relying on it as my sole source of income. Mm-hmm. But I think anybody at the end of the day, you hope that people appreciate what you've done and the work that goes into stuff. And I think a lot of times we can hear a song on the radio or read a book or see a painting or, you know, illustrations. And I know I fall, like, I'll admit that I do this all the time. I don't always appreciate how much work went into it. Like, even the creating of a movie or a TV show, that there's so many pieces and parts that go into it. And if you walk away from a movie and you're like, oh, that movie sucked, you know, still to somebody they poured their heart into it. Mm-hmm. And so I try to find at least a way to appreciate it. I don't have to love it, but I don't have to tear it down.
Yeah, I completely agree. You know, and the one thing I guess that is interesting, that kind of the evolution that Andrew's gone through with this has been the fact that he did record 2 different bands not using his name, right? Like, he had I don't want to say anonymity, because obviously his name was listed on as being in the band, but he wasn't necessarily putting those songs out under his name. Mm-hmm. And that's, you know, the one thing as I've gone through this process trying to decide, like, when I finish this book, will I publish it under my true name? Because then, you know, when you Google search me, then you can find all of the professional things about me too. And like, what are the risks of that? Especially with it being my first book, you know, if it doesn't deliver the way that I want to, will that have any implications for me professionally? Versus, do I, you know, use a pen name, or do I do a hybrid and use like my first name and then like my maiden name, or, you know, just something like that to try to decide. And I think it's been difficult because I see this body, for me, what I'm working on, as kind of a love letter to Chicago and to the women around me that have helped make me who I am. And so I do kind of want to write it under my true name to just like validate that in them. But yeah, it's definitely scarier in my opinion. And so I could see where putting his songs under Jack's Mannequin was probably kind of that protection a little bit, just depending on how that worked out for him.
Well, I could definitely see that. And it's interesting you mentioned that, Lindsay, because even this podcast, I know people can Google my name, and I don't know, one day they might come across any of these recordings. And that did occur to me when I started doing this, that, potential employers or whatever could, find this podcast and be like, oh, I wonder what he's talking about. And kind of keeping that in mind when I'm putting out these recordings. So a little bit different, because I don't consider this as much of a creative endeavor as what you guys are doing and what music is, because this is more just like talking about the things I love. But still, it's reflective of you as a person as well. So I get that side of it too, and something that a musician has to consider as well when they put something out, not only in their own name but under a name like Jack's Mannequin. We're going to jump into lyrics pretty quick here, because I definitely want to get your thoughts on the lyrics to Made for Each Other. But just real quick, I want to go through a couple of notes on the sound of the song. We talked about this earlier, that the beginning of the song kind of sounds like a party. From the get-go, you have these positive vibes, like it sounds like a party, we said earlier. Besides that, anything that we've said already, but like, how does this song make you guys feel, like when the song begins?
I smile. It's a good one.
Yeah.
I'm usually on here talking with you about these very sad songs that make you want to cry.
Oh, that's true. We do talk about sad ones, don't we? Yeah. Restless Dream. Let's go through the list real quick. Restless Dream, Rescued. What am I missing? Before Kill the Messenger. I know I'm missing one. Oh, Watch the Sky. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Kill the Messenger. You're right. We talk about all the sad ones. We're talking about a happy one this time, at least in part one.
I like part two, and maybe because there's a little bit of sadness in there, but overall I feel like it's a hopeful song.
I think so too. I think, especially when we get into lyrics, I think there's definitely some hopeful lyrics, kind of encouragement. There's a lot of reflection. But yeah, there's definitely two sounds to this song, right? If we call it all one song, it's all one track, then there's definitely two sounds to this song. In the first half, or 2.5 minutes, as you said earlier, is definitely like the more positive, more party, more happy sound. You said it makes you happy. I would even argue the very beginning of the song kind of sounds like a carnival, which is definitely a Billy Joel reference. I understand the piano, it sounds like a carnival, but intended. I just feel like it sounds like such a happy, like go lucky, like everybody's just celebratory mood, How about you, Lindsay? How does the opening of the song make you feel?
Same. I think it's so joyous, and like anything in the world could happen. Like, this is the start to our future, right? So I love it.
Oh, I love the way you put that. Like, it's just kind of opening the future wide open to whatever may come, and good things coming. So,
no joke. When you had sent this, how does it make you feel? And I wrote, it's fun. Like I'm at a carnival or inside a video game. So you just think carnival. I was like, what? I never think about carnivals, but that song.
There's something about that sound, the opening, whatever that instrument is, because we've talked about this before, Hazel. Like, I'm not good at identifying individual instruments, but like there's something going on in the beginning. I don't know if it's the piano, keyboard.
I think it's an organ.
Organ. Okay. That does make sense. Yeah. So
to extrapolate that a little further, then, like, I mean, the front of the album is Venice Beach, right? And if you walk down Venice Beach, obviously, like, there's, pianos and stuff along there too, and people. But like, if you keep walking down Venice Beach, eventually you get to Santa Monica Pier, and it's kind of like a carnival environment. So like, maybe that was part of the inspiration behind that.
Oh yeah, because there's and the song ends. So we listened to earlier with the end of the song, you can hear it's the beach in the background. It doesn't sound like a carnival, but it sounds like the sounds of the beach, which I assume is supposed to be of that boardwalk there. I don't know too much about that area. What you just said was more than I knew about how that area is laid out. But I do have a board game called Santa Monica. The artwork in Santa Monica, the game, actually reminds me of the Everything in Transit artwork a little bit, which makes sense because it's supposed to be the same place. Hazel, you said earlier you didn't notice this, but Yeah, there are horn samples. Now I would have just said horns, but I know from the liner notes that it's horn samples. And I said this earlier, but I'll say it again. It reminds me of later era Beatles. I don't know if I ever would have put that in the same category as Andrew, but it doesn't seem very far-fetched because he was really delving into like what he could do with like pop music and rock and roll and put them together, which is obviously what the Beatles did. But they also, like Andrew McMahon on Everything in Transit, kind of incorporated different sounds in later albums just to kind of try things out. And I feel like that's what he was doing here. So that's what it kind of reminds me of. I can't pinpoint a specific Beatles song, but there's definitely a sound to it that makes me think of some of those songs from the late 60s. How about part 2? How does part 2 make you feel when you get that? Either we can call it a piano interlude between the two or the intro into part 2, You Can Breathe.
I'm going to go with hopeful still on that one. Like, you're trying to just work through something, but you believe that maybe it'll work out.
How about you, Hazel?
It's exactly what Lindsay said.
Yeah.
Hopeful. And of course, I love the piano.
Yeah.
So,
It's that part is beautiful.
Does it remind you of Raindrops, or is it just because he talks about rain being in the song? Because it reminds me of Raindrops.
I don't
know. I don't think of Raindrops. The adjective I would give, the way I feel when I hear those notes come in, those opening piano notes to part 2, is reflective. I think of like, okay, the journey he just went through in part 1 and what we've gone through on the album so far. And I feel like part 2 does a really good job of like bringing it all back, of kind of wrapping it up. And that's what's, again, kind of interesting of the topic of, is this the last song or is it, not, but the final one on the album or whatever, final chapter, because I feel like part 2 does a really good job. And from those opening notes, I just feel like we're kind of like, oh yeah, this is the journey we just went through and we're kind of wrapping it up or getting to the end. That's kind of what I feel reflective when I hear those notes. And I can't say that I felt that way the very first time I heard this, but now when I hear it, obviously that's how I feel. I don't always notice the bass guitar on songs in general, but there's definitely a buzzing bass guitar at the beginning of part 2 after those initial piano notes into the verse. So, and I really appreciate that. It's kind of cool when I know bass, the low end, the bass guitar is used in a specific manner in a lot of songs. It's not supposed to be out front in a lot of places, but I feel like it really serves a purpose, being just about up front in that part of the song. Kind of like shakes you a little bit. I like how the end has this like marching drum beat, like it's kind of driving towards somewhere or away from somewhere. That's what it always kind of makes me think of. Well, let's talk lyrics then. So where do we want to start with lyrics? I've got a couple of notes here, but I'm kind of wide open on what we want to talk about here.
Yeah, I think that this conversation on part 1 is going to be a little bit difficult for us, mainly because I think it encompasses a lot of adult topics. I don't know how y'all feel about that.
Oh, yeah. No, it's all good. I mean, we knew Andrew was doing a lot of adult activities.
Yes.
At the time, which we've already covered, staying out late, partying all day, whatever.
The opening lines to this, I don't know that I fully understand, but basically it seems like the whole opening for this is just like one big party after another. Like we're going out, we're drinking, we're driving to Las Vegas, and then just the concept of maybe we were made for each other. Is it possible for the world to look this way forever? Is like, loving your friends a lot, and that youthfulness of like, this is exactly where I want to be and the people I want to be with, and we have so much in common, and this is what I want to keep doing every night because I'm having so much fun doing it.
I love that line, is it possible for the world to look this way forever? And it was kind of my theme line in my head for the cruise. And I think I mentioned that on the episode where I reflected on the cruise. It's just, wanting to take a little bit of that with you everywhere you go. That's how I felt about that experience. But that's kind of how I feel about the carefree nature of this part 1 of this song. Is like, oh my gosh, could the world look this way forever? Could I just always be happy with my friends, having a good time, be carefree, surrounded by people who love me and that I love? It's just a beautiful sentiment. And going back to the beginning and kind of what you alluded to earlier, I'll just be blunt. Is he tripping? Is that the first few lines here? I swim across an ocean. It's my mattress in the basement. I'm sweating out excuses that would make your stomach turn. Is he like coming down from something, or?
That's kind of how I took it. Either that or like super hungover, like you're swimming through all the beer.
Oh, that's true. So it could, yeah, it could be. Oh, he's sweating a lot. Okay, I swim across an ocean as my mattress. Okay, he's just like waking up in a pool of sweat. Okay, so a little bit more gross than I thought, but now I'm thinking it might be that.
I mean, there's definitely a cocaine reference. Well, several cocaine references.
Oh,
in here,
100%. So. We filled our cups, lit one up, and the snow began to burn. I think that's a couple different things going on. But I honestly didn't get that last line reference for many, many years. I think someone pointed it out to me. I was like, oh yeah, that's what. Okay, snow, burn, got it.
Yeah.
And then you get the reference in the next bit after. Is it possible for the world to look this way forever? I talked so much, I'm sure I didn't realize I'd gone crazy, didn't catch my bloody nose, or that my heart tried to explode. Like, obviously, he's on something. I do like where it goes. I actually really like the next set of lines. It's not kind of as much in that direction as it is just like that carefree that I was talking about earlier. Like, I still live with my high school friends. Some people never change at all. We're still the same compulsive drunks that we were when we were small. Hazel, something that you and I talked about in the Kill the Messenger episode is these eerie references in the Everything in Transit lyrics about sickness or hospital or doctor. And this is one of those that I was referencing. Someone get this man to a hospital. I know it's a completely different context here, but it's just, again, kind of eerie for where things went after that. I mean, he did land in a hospital
right.
After writing this. So,
did you guys have any misheard lyrics in this section? Because I do.
I do too.
Okay.
I'm curious to hear what yours is.
I'll be curious.
I'm gonna have to edit mine, but I thought that they were saying, I still live with my high school friends. Some people never change at all. We're still the same old BS drunks.
Oh, really? No, that isn't. No.
That's not.
I thought it was the actual word, though.
Yeah. When I sing the song, though, I never thought it was compulsive. I never knew what that word was. I just. Do you guys ever sing lyrics when you're singing to yourself and you just kind of mumble the part you don't know? Mm-hmm. Of course, right? Like that's what I did at that part. I never knew the word until I read these lyrics.
Well, because mine is a little further down where I would mumble dum 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 dum. It's the always in the haze of a car crash, the orange airbag dust. Yeah, no, I think I always said something like the origin that something and blah, 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 mumble. I just never knew what that was. That the orange airbag dust. That's new for me.
Well, now that we're reading it, now that you've read it aloud, yeah, I never knew that's what he was saying. I don't know what I thought that was. Maybe I'll notice it next time, but yeah, orange airbag dust covers everything. I've heard in the haze of a car crash, but I've never noticed the airbag dust, but I guess that kind of makes sense. Kind of, sort of. I don't know what it means. I mean, it makes sense that it's connected to a car crash, right? But that's about it.
I've really liked that part, though, tying to the Cecilia and the Satellite song, because he talks about getting into a car accident, there. And it makes me wonder if it's not an interconnected thing or if this is like a separate situation. But I've always kind of tied those two situations together in my mind for some reason.
Yeah, I never put that together, but...
Yeah, I haven't either.
I do like finding those, and I know we've all done this before, where we've kind of connected lyrics from one song or one album to another. Like, I wonder if that's related to this. I always like the running themes in his music. Of course, we get the ocean reference in the very first line of the song, but yeah, he goes back to these common themes, which he's admitted, and I kind of like that. And that doesn't seem like an unlikely thing or uncommon thing for a writer to do, whether you're writing books or songs, right? Like you have your kind of go-tos for your themes.
I'm curious what you guys think I'm a long way from my fireworks days means.
A long, long way from a fireworks days. Or firework days.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's another drug reference or if it's literally like, God, this is awful. My friends and I used to play with fireworks when we were kids. It was so stupid. Do not recommend. But we would, but the corner store would sell us fireworks as kids. And then, when we were like 8, 10, 12 years old, and then we'd go in the woods and set them off and do stupid things with them. And maybe he's literally referencing being young and stupid and playing with fireworks, and then kind of maybe playing the drug reference back in, but I still like to burn, 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 kind of like a play on words.
That is such a boy thing, Steve. I never would have thought of that, but it makes so much sense.
Yeah, they should not be selling fireworks I think it's better now than it was, but yeah, they shouldn't sell fireworks to kids, because that's what they'll do. They'll go in the woods and blow things up. So obviously,
what do you think, Hazel?
I mean, my feeling is it's probably some sort of like a firework days, like you're high, you're trying to get high, burn, burn, burn.
Yeah. Well, that's true. It might just simply be that you're still in a daze, and you're in a daze already, and you still like to burn, burn, burn. So
That's interesting.
But then from there, going back to the line we mentioned, I'm always in the haze of a car crash. Maybe that's not as literal as I thought when you read it earlier. Maybe it's more of I'm always on the verge of basically collapse, or like ruining my life, destroying things, blowing things up in my own life.
Which kind of ties back to the song that we talked about, Steve, with the whole like artistic piece of like needing to kind of destroy your life to get that out. Mm-hmm.
Kind of fits with that theme from the same time frame.
In the Three Pianos book, was he in a car accident? Am I totally making this up?
He definitely talked about doing stupid things on the road with his friends. I don't think he mentioned a car crash with his friends. I don't know if he actually referenced the car crash with his mom that he references in Cecilia, though.
No, I remember him talking about something about like maybe stealing roadway signs or something.
Yeah, they stole cones and basically redid the traffic pattern with cones to make people drive the wrong way. And he admitted it's one of the stupidest things he's ever done, and he could have killed somebody, but they were kids, and so there was that. Yeah, I do remember that story, because I was like, now I never did that when I was a kid, but we did pretty stupid things like that that I still have guilt about to today. But so let's talk about part 2 then. I'll just kick it off, because obviously after that piano intro that we talked about that we loved so much earlier into part 2, I just feel like these are really crucial lines to the whole piece of music when you put it all together. You can breathe now is how it starts. And it feels like this culmination again of everything that's happened on the album so far, everything that he's sang about, all the music he's played. And now we're at this like crest. It's like cresting right now at this moment of You Can Breathe Now. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree. And I feel the part like you can breathe, but the air is running out on you. It's like you can keep going, but at some point there's not going to be enough to like fill you to keep going. I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, I think it does. Makes me wonder, is he thinking long term? Like, there's a finite time on our lives, and live now because you can breathe, but the air will run out one day. Is it like a long term thing? Because I never thought about it that way until you said what you just said. But that was just kind of my response to what you just said.
Yeah, no, the way you just explained that was definitely what I was going for, but in a much better way.
Okay. So yeah, I never thought of it that way, like the long term. I always thought of it more like someone struggling to breathe. So it was like hard for me to think of this as an optimistic piece. But the way you just put it, I don't know. Maybe it is, breathe now because you won't be able to forever. I do it now because you won't be able. I don't know. Just Never thought about it that way until this moment. So
Do you think that it's someone saying that to him, like you're living your life too fast and you need to slow down a little bit because eventually that's going to take a toll on you? You can't keep living at the pace that you're living.
I like that too. I could definitely see that.
that does fit in with, especially coming off of part one of this song. So like, the pacing, not only the pacing, but all the things that he's saying, they're doing, and then someone responding. I could see that. So we talked earlier about how maybe the first half is about his friends, which seems very likely at this point after reading through all the lyrics. And the second half we're kind of getting to now, where maybe this is back to his relationship with Kelly, or maybe not specifically Kelly, but probably, right? That's what I think the general assumption with this album is. So the next piece after the you can breathe, but the air is running out on you. You waited for me in the rain in the parking lot, cold hands, lips blue, close stuck to you. You could have phoned me for a ride. It's a mess out there. You said the rain's the rain. I love the way he sings this next line. Some air'd be good for you. And then how the backing vocals of you can breathe now come in. And then, well, good for you. You can breathe, but the air is running out in the background. That's like an emotional moment on the album for me.
I agree. I think that whole paragraph is super emotional. Like you can tell there's tension there, and like maybe trying to negotiate something, like, well, you could have called me, and like, well, it's fine. It's just rain, right? Mm-hmm. And like that lyric is so simple. The rain's the rain, but like, I don't know. It feels way less simple than it is. There's something magic about it.
I think Lindsay saying simple, all of the verses in this part two, what I really appreciate about the way Andrew writes is how simple it can be, but it's so descriptive, and I see that person in my head. And even in the next verse, it's simple, but yet so descriptive and moving, right? Like you feel each of the pieces, and it's, not at 20,000 words to get there. So I really like that about it.
We talked about common themes and lyrics, and the rain being one of them. I can't help but think Atlanta started raining on me. And just like this, Hazel, what you just said, that gives me a visual as well. I always imagine somebody in the rain. In that one, it's more like in, what is that? She Paints Me Blue. God, I should know this.
Yep.
Okay. And She Paints Me Blue. I imagine like somebody in an alley with kind of like a street light as a lamp over them, and it's like pouring rain on them.
Steve, did you see this?
I probably did. It was probably, yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah. It's probably it's probably like subconsciously coming back to me. I'm not looking at it. No, I swear I don't have it in front of me. But I do wonder. Yeah. No, ironically, I'm talking about She Paints Me Blue is what gives me that picture, not this song.
Well, this song.
Yeah. It's the street lamp over top of two people. My gosh. In the liner notes. I swear the artwork doesn't seem that bold and brazen when you're looking at it on a little CD booklet. Just for everybody listening, Lindsay's got the liner notes from the vinyl, so it's like a nice big picture of this. I'll have to include that on Instagram as well, that picture. So that's
I'll send you
neat.
some photos of it. That way you have it.
Yeah, there you go. So for this particular song, I actually get a different image, ironically. I get an image of, I guess it's similar. Two people, not so much lit, but just kind of standing in front of a car, and it's dark, like kind of like a movie. Like I see a movie in my mind with this. So Hazel, I definitely get where you're coming from with like getting the visuals going.
I feel like the next section is a kind of like a
romantic.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say like a lover's reconnection, like
yeah,
like a makeup situation.
And that's what I was kind of getting at before. Is like he uses so few words, but you know exactly what they're doing. And.
Oh, I see it now. I didn't even think. Okay,
and
I get
it's
where
not
you're going.
vulgar.
No.
Yeah.
It's like a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
It isn't say like Casual by Chapel Rowan situation, but like could be reflective.
No, as everybody listening goes and looks at the lyrics to that song.
Right.
Only if you're over 16.
Yeah, please. No, I actually thought of it like I see the romance, but yeah, I'm seeing the rest of what you're alluding to now. Wow, it's descriptive but not graphic.
Yeah.
A reconnection. That was a very nice way to put it there, Lindsay.
See, maybe this will be inspiration though or maybe it already has been inspiration for you, Hazel. What do you think?
Yeah, maybe. There's no cars on Fire Island, but
Oh, that's true. Yeah, they go to the city sometimes, right?
they do.
Yeah, I love the way he sings those lines though. So like honestly, this is weird. I'm a lyrics person. We've talked about that a lot, but I never thought as much about what he was saying there as the way he sings it. So I can hear it in my head, and I love the cadence of those lines. The way it's kind of like playful, and I wouldn't call it silly. I think that would be, I don't think that would be the right descriptor for that. I just like the kind of playful but nice way that he sings that. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, I can hear it in my head right now too, because he pauses.
Mm-hmm.
Skin, hands true, my hands all over you. And it's just kind of the subtle significance to what it means, building it up, I guess.
I don't know if this is the way to put that or if I'm right on this, but I think there's some like dual vocals going on there when the lines you just said, skin new, hands true, my hands all over you. It's like there's two Andrews singing because I don't think it's I don't think it's a different vocalist, but it's only on those lines I think. But I don't know if that's the proper way to put that. But the vocals change in those two lines, and I love that. I actually had that in my notes.
I also think like how it's delivered, like the skin new, kind of a hesitation, hands true, hesitation, my hands all over you, kind of goes along with that reconnection thing, right? Like, should we keep going down this pathway? Like, here's the hesitation points of stopping this situation from progressing, and then the next line. So what's another night? At this point, like we've already done this several times. So what's one more time, right? And so I think that plays really well with it.
We can't see through the rain's the rain. I'm not sure if he's saying we can't see through to the other side, like we're just going to do this and not worry about what's next, or if he's literally saying we can't see through the rain. I don't know.
The liner notes here say the seats rolled back, they can't see.
Oh, they can't see
the rain's
through.
Yeah.
They can't see through. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that does make sense. So that kind of clears that up for me. Some air'd be good for you, which is kind of tying back to some of the initial lines of part 2. The air is running out. The air's running out on you. Some air'd be good for you. Is that a statement of, when you're in this intense moment with somebody, whether it's conversation or it's something else, and it's kind of the go-to in like movies to say like, I think I need some air. And I need to basically be out of the situation for a moment. I need to go take a walk, whatever. So sometimes they say I need some air, and that's kind of the impression I got with that line is some air would be good for you. Like, okay, maybe you need a break. Maybe you need to like take a step back from this for a moment. That's the impression I get from this line.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So I guess the next part though, this confuses me. Is the next verse, or maybe this is the bridge. I don't quite know.
Yeah, I would call this the bridge.
For miles down the shores of California to the coast of Mexico where you could hide and no one'd have to know. That part's sad. And so I'm curious what you guys think about that or how you relate that to the overall song. Is that the fresh air that they're getting? Maybe that's it.
Yeah, I mean, did they like reconnect and then decide it wasn't a good idea? And go their separate ways? I assume so because when he wrote this, they were broken up. Maybe that's kind of some metaphorical talk for one of them going away, walking miles down the shores of California to the coast of Mexico. I don't know if there was any literal trip. I just think that someone took down to Mexico, but I think it's just kind of like I need to get out of here for a while. I need to hide. I absolutely love those lines, and again. I do love the lyrics, but again, it's the way he sings this. It's just so like emotional. Like it cuts me deep when he sings those 4 lines right there.
Okay, so stick with me on this one. And
Okay.
I'm okay with this not being the answer, but if this was a situation where you were like reconnecting with an ex, right? And like you are in your early 20s and everyone has opinions about your relationships and everything. And so like you're going to secretly meet with somebody because like you're not going to bring them back to your house, right? Because then your friends are going to be like, "Really? You did that again?" Or some other judgy thing, right? Then that line, you walked for miles down the shores of California to the coast of Mexico where you could hide and no one had to know. What if that is like maybe not actually Mexico, but just somewhere else. And then like you're going and meeting at this parking lot because like that's your spot or wherever. And that's what they're talking about. It's not like an actually hiding in Mexico, but like just like a hideaway secret spot for like your relationship.
Yeah, where no one can find you, where you feel like you can be alone and no one can find you there. Yeah, I that's what I'm thinking it's a metaphor like what you're saying. I agree with you.
I like that.
How do you feel about the last, maybe we were made for each other? Is it possible for the world to look this way forever and here? Like, what does it make you think of?
Well, the way the song ends, you mean? The last lyrics of the song?
Yeah, because I mean, like, it's the same lyrics as throughout the whole thing, right? But it sounds different when you listen to it.
I love the way they, what's the word I'm looking for? It's...
Reverberate? Echo?
Maybe. It's almost echoing back the different line. This whole outro, the maybe we're made for each other, you can breathe, but the air is running out. It's like trade-off. I don't know if that's technical. I doubt it is. But like I would call it trade-off. Like when there's 2 different vocalists singing back to each other, this isn't that because it's the same vocalist. But it's like his vocals are singing back to each other, the different lines. Maybe I've missed it. I don't see the line in these lyrics, but he definitely sings, "Where are you now? Where are you now?" in this song, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't see this written in these lyrics, but it's definitely there. I love that. That's the beautiful wrap up to this album to me is, and I love when artists do that. I've heard it a few other times. Cartel's Final Tracks Q&A on Chroma is my favorite example of that of all time, where it's just kind of a culmination of many of the tracks kind of fused together. I love that he does that here. I think it's so cool. It's so emotional. And again, I think that's what gives me that reflective mood when I hear this song. It's like, oh, we've gone on this journey and now we're kind of wrapping it up and we're going back to the beginning. I think it honestly could have been even better if he incorporated like something from Holiday from Real into it, or even I'm Ready or Bruised or something like that. And maybe there's a reference that I've missed, but I love when...
He did. There is a reference.
To what?
It's the seagulls. To Holiday from Real. It opens with the seagulls and it closes with the seagulls.
That's true. Yes, it does open and... yeah, you're absolutely right. We listened to that earlier. I love when artists are able to do that, kind of pull it all together. And again, the power of the full album. So it's a beautiful thing.
Another plug for listening from beginning to end.
Hazel's on board. Why aren't you, everyone?
I'm sold.
How do you feel about it, Hazel? Like the last little bit of it, like that with carrying that chorus all the way through.
I think it goes back to what you said earlier, and we've mentioned maybe a couple times. Just there's hope, and I think it kind of leaves you with this feeling, and I think you can kind of take it either way you want it to be, based off maybe how you relate to the song, or maybe just whatever kind of place you're in when you're listening to the song. Maybe sometimes it's despair and other times it's really joyful.
I always feel like the last one sounds like kind of otherworldly a little bit, and like maybe he's at a crossroads, like maybe we were made for each other. Is it possible for the world to look this way forever? I could stay and party with my friends and I could have that experience, or I could transition into being more of a family man, and like I could have this woman and this could be my wife, but either way I'm going to have to give something up, right? Like I'm not going to be able to go out and party if I'm going to be more of a family, or if I'm going to live that lifestyle, I'm going to have to give her up. That's kind of how I've always taken that very ending to be.
No, I would definitely agree with that. That's a great interpretation. Lindsay, you have the liner notes in front of you. Is that where you now line in the actual lyrics, or no?
It
That you
isn't.
Okay, and is this other line I love, "Let me out on you." Is that in there?
Where are you finding that at?
I'm finding it from my own memory of the song.
Oh,
Yeah, no, I wrote it down in my notes like as I was listening to the song, but I don't have it in like written in the lyrics necessarily. But he does sing "Let me out on you"
no, that's not there either.
toward the end, and I love that line.
I mean, he could say it, but it's not there.
Wow, Hazel? Do you remember that line?
I
Like I'm nuts now.
not off the top of my head. I'm gonna have to go back and listen.
All right, I'm gonna sing it. I'm not a good singer. Let me out on you.
Yep. Nope. That makes sense.
Okay, yep.
Okay, so he does sing that.
Maybe it's more of like a background.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Thing that, so maybe it's not in the lyrics because it's a background. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's interesting that two of the parts I love most about this outro is two pieces that are kind of background vocals, if you will. So the "Where Are You Now" and "Let Me Out on You." And the note I made about that is the way I interpret that is like that's a reference back to that verse that we were talking about in the car. Like I feel like that's like a physical attraction, like he really wants her. That's how I've always interpreted that line. And it's like, and again, going back to years ago, I always thought this was a love song, and it is. It definitely is, and he said so. But I never really put as much weight into the friends factor as in the relationship factor because because the ending was always so important to me. It's like, "Where are you now? Let me out on you." Those things that he's, wondering about Kelly, wanting to say to Kelly. That's how I interpreted those parts. It's always been really important to me, those lines.
So I don't have this album sitting in front of me now. No, I don't. I don't have this album sitting in front of me now. But I do wonder because in Synesthesia, he has something kind of similar where he's got the shooting fireworks and falling stars and prison bars. I don't know if those lyrics are in the liner notes either, or if they are just like those background lyrics
it's like
that
an
have
echo
just
back.
become ubiquitous. Yeah, where people know them, but they're just not there. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. He does say, "Where are you now?" a bunch. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
Yeah. We may have covered them already, but do you all have a favorite part of the song or some favorite? You probably have multiple favorite parts of the song, I'm sure.
I think for me, it's definitely the verses in part 2.
Okay.
You kind of already touched on that, but yeah, those are the parts that I really love about the song.
I feel like filled my cup and lit one up. The snow began to burn. I don't know why. I really love that one. It just, I can picture that situation, I guess.
It's a
I
fun
don't know.
line.
It just seems fun.
Yeah,
it's a fun line to sing.
It is. It's a fun line to sing. It's a fun line to imagine, and he sounds like he's having fun when he's singing it, which is I think the really neat part about this.
Like you just want your cup filled and you're holding your hands up and we're like, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like beach party. I don't know. Like it seems like a good time.
I've already alluded a lot to this. I'll just come out and say it. So the whole ending bridge to outro of the song is my favorite part. The lines that Hazel read earlier, "And you walked for miles down the shores of California to the coast of Mexico where you could hide and no one would have to know," all the way to the outro where he's kind of singing back to himself. "Maybe we were made for each other. You can breathe, but the air's running out." And then fusing in those other lines like "Where are you now?" and "Let me out on you." All of that, like the whole last minute of the music probably is just so amazing. Again, it kind of culminates the whole album, and how I feel about this album can really be encompassed within that minute of music right there.
Yeah, the other thing that I really love about this song is like speaking back to the simplicity is just the "you can breathe now" and like the different aspects that you can take and interpret that into your life, right? In 2017, I went to the Bottom Lounge after show for Lollapalooza, and I went by myself. It was the first time I'd ever gone to see Andrew by myself. I obviously was a little bit nervous because I didn't know a lot of people, and it was going to be a late show. And I met Caitlin in line, and we were randomly standing next to each other. At the time, I was living in Rockford, which she's from that area, and I realized I worked with her aunt. So suddenly we have all of this in common, and I was telling her, like, I'm going to get my first tattoo done, and I really want a line from this song in Andrew's handwriting. And so she made sure that I got to meet Andrew and get him to write "You Can Breathe Now" for me, and I have it tattooed. And so I think that there's like a lot of significance of that too. And like meeting Caitlin, her bringing me into this fold, like helped me create a lot of friendships and relationships. And like without her, I probably would not be here talking to you two. So, I think that there's a lot that ties back to that, but that was always an important line for me too, just like in life in general. So
yeah, I forgot that you have that line as a tattoo. That's incredible, but that makes perfect sense. It's a great line. It can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and also makes sense because this is your favorite song.
Okay, but we didn't ask Hazel. Is it her favorite song? We still don't know.
Oh, we don't. That's right. We said we were gonna ask that.
It's one of my favorites. I love it, but I don't have a hard time picking like a favorite. Mm-hmm. Like the top, it's definitely high up there, but I don't know if I can give it like the number one title.
That's difficult to put anything. I'm surprised Lindsay's able. Like I don't know that I have like I guess I've probably stated it. I do have like a number one song, but sometimes it fluctuates a little bit around the top. I'd say this is like top 20 easily. Like if Andrew has 160, 170 songs, top 20 for me.
Lindsay's like, what? Not top 5?
20 is so many, Steve. That's like barely even on a set list.
I'll have to look it up for you, but I do have an Andrew in order playlist, and it's my first to last favorite Andrew songs on a playlist, all of them that are available on Spotify. Anyway, which isn't all of them, obviously. I'll have to see where I rank this one, but that was years ago, and it does change. So, especially after these conversations, it changes. So, I don't know if it moved up or down after this conversation or whatever, but right now I'm feeling like I really enjoy this song.
So, Hazel, would you say this is in your top 20?
I'd say it's probably my top 10.
Oh, all right. Raising the stakes a little bit. Is that better for you, Lindsay? Is that more acceptable?
It is.
Okay.
I mean, like, we could barely get through Casey Kasem's top 40 on your list.
Yeah. I mean, Everything in Transit itself has 11 tracks, all right? Plus there's all the other good stuff he's put out over the years, so.
You know what, Steve? I've never, like, actually sat and ranked, like, really going through. I might need to break it out by project instead of everything all together. But I think I'm going to do that.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to do. You all know how I feel about Something Corporate's North. So, I mean, all that's up there, too. So you put North and Transit together, and it's, like, really hard. That's, 23 tracks now, I mean, to sort through. And I will go on record and say not every one of my top 20 songs are on those two albums, of course. But
what's your favorite project, Hazel?
It depends on what mood I'm in. Honestly, obviously Something Corporate is what I first started with, and then I went through a phase of obviously loving Jack's Mannequin, and then Andrew's music. I love that it's also a little bit different. I feel like the same themes, but so I think it really just depends on where I'm at mentally and what I'm currently doing. Like, there's times when all I'll listen to is Something Corporate, and then there's times when all I'll listen to is Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness. Because I was actually thinking about that the other day. I said, I don't know if I have a favorite. I just love it all.
Do you have a favorite album out of all of them? There's a correct answer.
Yeah, so I would say my favorite album is Everything in Transit.
Yeah.
It is. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say on your Robe episode, you have to declare, you know.
Oh my gosh. Okay. No,
You don't. I'm kidding. You don't.
I do think Everything in Transit is definitely, there's so many songs on there that mean a lot to me. And I think that like the connection to that album, and it could have been also the time of my life when I first heard it, that also plays a significant part in there. But maybe I will have to spend some time just going through and really trying to rank and think through, categorize, and do that.
And I look through it, and some of the answers surprise me now. So it's a Spotify playlist, so I can easily adjust. And I'll be like, wait a second, that one's below this one? There's no way. And I'll move it up sometimes when I notice that.
Are we allowed to ask for spoilers a little bit from your next book?
Yeah, you sure.
Will this song play into your next book at all, or is that part of what made you want to discuss it, or is there something else from Everything in Transit, or nothing anymore from any of Andrew's projects?
Kill the Messenger is definitely in the next book, which we had just talked about a couple weeks ago. This one, as of now, is not in any of the books, but doesn't mean that it can't be. So maybe.
Lindsay's like, you're saying there's a chance.
Honestly, I don't know. But yeah, it definitely could potentially be. And I'm not trying to like lie to you. I really don't know.
Yeah. Wrapping it up with this song, I do like that it's the last song as the final chapter of the album, but it's not the last song on the album. Because I kind of feel like, going back to the topic we discussed earlier, I kind of like that idea of an epilogue. And I feel like even though that it ends with that recording of Andrew talking, and then it goes, like, it may not have always made sense to me, but especially after talking it through and after researching the song a little bit, it kind of makes sense that after that, we get another song. I'll look forward to talking to that on a future episode. I also want to say that regarding the fan base, like, I kind of, although my life and times is not nearly as wild as part one of this song in probably any sense, but I do like thinking about part one of this song as like my interaction with other fans and friends that I've made through the fan base. What this song's really become to me is like a song about how important it is to connect with others, have meaningful friendships, share passions with other people. And I just want to say thank you guys both for being here, because this is what I love doing, is like sharing our passion for music. And that's kind of like the celebratory mood, if you will, of part one is what I think of now when I think of what I've been able to do in this podcast, but also go out to shows and, like I said, see people across the room, or like even when it's planned, like we planned, when we were able to plan to meet up in Vegas, and hopefully again at some point this year next, like we can all meet up again. And that's kind of what this song makes me think of in general. I know there's a whole love story part of it, and I think that's equally important, but that's just part one and what it means to me. Part two, I just think, is a beautiful love story about two people struggling, to connect and trying to maybe find that connection again. Any final thoughts from either of you about the song?
We touched on a lot.
I would say so.
For you to go through.
We did it.
It's a good thing I didn't say it would only be an hour, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
As a final quote from Andrew here from the oral history of Everything in Transit, that video interview that we've referenced in past episodes, he said, "I think all those elements combined to make this rad little army of music lovers and fans of the album that really did bond going through. And in my mind, it just deepened the culture of my music and my fan base because I felt it. There was just this energy around it that we all felt. That's a one in a million thing that a lot of artists don't get to experience. It was wrapped up in a lot of trauma for me, but it was also really healing, and it helped me get better." Well, I want to thank everybody again for listening. Be sure to subscribe and rate the podcast so more people can find it, and always feel free to post a comment on Instagram. I'd love to hear from you, or message me directly even. If you'd like to be a guest like Lindsay or Hazel, you can DM me or even email me at somethinginthewilderness@gmail.com. And again, thank you both, not only for being on the show, but for your friendship. I appreciate it.
Thank you
so much.
So to everyone out there listening, I hope you also find people in your life that you get to share your passions with. Is it possible for the world to look this way forever?